We'll try to be as efficient as we possibly can. In lieu of roll call, I've got a sign-in sheet that's going around, so we'll just skip through the roll call, and everyone just please try to sign that before you leave. Our next item is to adopt the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? We have a motion from Mr. Dunley. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Powers. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Our next item is the approval of minutes from the last meeting. Everyone should have had a chance to look through those. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes? Do we have a motion to approve them? All right, we have a first from Mr. Dudley. Is that a second from Mr. Beaver? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Now, our first item of business is the family life education policy, and I'm going to turn that over to Lori Stanton.
Good evening. Tonight I was going to talk to you a little bit about the statistics for teen pregnancy in Murray County, and then Centerstone is here and going to share with you a possible program that we could bring into our schools. First of all, I just kind of wanted to review what our statistics were in Murray County. The slide that is up on the screen gives you the breakdown by age groups for teen pregnancy in Murray County. You can see that we're actually pretty well below, well, not pretty well, but we are below the state average in all of the age groups, which is a positive because we cannot always say that we are below things. So that is a positive. I've also included at the bottom of the slide the law. I know there was some discussion previously about the 19.5 figure, and if Murray County is not below the 19.5 figure, that by law we have to be implementing something about that. The thing about the law, it is based on only the age group of 15 to 17. So you can see we're at 16.9. So we are within compliance of the law, so that's reassuring. And if you look at our teen pregnancy rates over the past 4 years, you can see that we've actually decreased by about half in 4 years in Murray County for that particular age group. That's just the 15 to 17 age group. If you look at the first slide, you'll see the largest number of pregnancies is the age group of 18 to 19 because teen pregnancy includes 18 to 19. But for 15 to 17, we are within where we should be. I did include a slide on all of the state laws related. So basically, the first one is if you're under or 19, or if you're over the 19.5, that there is a curriculum in place to address that. There is an additional law that basically says the State Board of Education has developed a complete curriculum for any LEA which fails to devise, adopt, or implement a local program. The program does have to be abstinence-based, and it also addresses gateway sexual activity, which can lead to teen pregnancy. Just to kind of give you a little history about teen pregnancy in the state, and really the only reason I'm somewhat privy to this information is because my previous job with the State Department of Health for 15 years, I was the director of chronic disease, and all of our health educators across the state actually fell under me. So in about 2011, when the law kind of changed, our health educators were literally pulled out of the schools. My background is nutrition and physical activity, and so all of a sudden I had like 136 folks that I got to redirect to nutrition and physical activity, and we had to steer them away from sex education. Notoriously, the health educators at the health department provided that instruction for years in our schools. But then the legislature and I guess our commissioner at the time just pulled them all out of the schools. And we saw this across the state because I had a lot of folks coming to me going, I've done this all my life. What do I do now? So I had to kind of really retrain people to do other things in the schools and in the community because that had been probably 50% of those health educators' jobs for years. Around 2012, the law did change, and that is when the 19.5 statistic came into play again. And basically the law said if you're under the 19.5, you don't have to do anything. So that's just kind of the history. And when that happened, a lot of folks didn't know what to do with sexual education in the schools. We're very fortunate that we had strong community partners across the state that continued to push for sexual education in the schools, but then it wasn't required in a lot of our counties. So that's just kind of, I think, how it ended up. To give you an idea, I've included the state health standards. I'm not going to read through them all, but I have them in my slides and will be happy to share those with you. But the law does refer to the state standards and states that any curriculum that is used must follow the state standards. And we do have those for grades 6 to 8. And then we also, well, there's 2 for 6 to 8. And then that should have been actually 9 to 12. But so we have them for high school and middle school. And so although Maury County Schools is in compliance with the law, we do have a great opportunity to provide a teen pregnancy and STD. Okay, I think, can y'all, okay, I don't think this is working, but can you hear me? Well, we do have a great opportunity to provide a teen pregnancy and STD prevention program. STD rates, unfortunately, are on the rise. Even though our pregnancy rates are going down, STD rates are on the rise, actually, for all age groups. And again, we want to do what we can to keep our teen pregnancy rate where it is. The fact that it's been cut in half in the past 4 years is phenomenal, but we want to keep it low. And really, if we could get it lower, that would be great, because honestly, I don't think we want any 15 to 17-year-old getting pregnant. So what we have, Centerstone actually approached us this year to provide a program in our schools. It's called Be in Charge. It is an abstinence-focused, evidence-based curriculum. It's called Making a Difference. It's been taught in over 100 different classrooms in Middle Tennessee already. And there is a grant that is actually allowing Centerstone to provide these classes in our schools at no charge to us. And so it's really a great opportunity for us to try to continue to lower that rate and keep it low. And so tonight I did invite Centerstone to come and share with you all an overview of the program so you would have an idea of what would be taught in the schools. We have received their curriculum. It's about 800 pages long, but if anyone's 800 pages, I believe. But if anyone's interested, I have that. Welcome to share that with you. I also have their DVD that we're going to review to be sure that it's appropriate for our schools. But it does all follow the abstinence-based guidelines that the law requires. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Centerstone so they can share with you the program that they have. Yes.
Are y'all working on the audio right now, or something with it? Turn the speakers down. It should be getting it back through the speakers over here. Thank you, because it was screaming.
Oh.
Yeah, I think if we adjust this microphone, it'll be a little bit more convenient for you if we do it like that.
All right, am I too loud? Because I can certainly be loud enough without the microphone. My name is Amanda McGeshik, and I am one of the program coordinators for the Be in Charge program of Centerstone. This is Tabitha Floyd, one of my team leaders, who just gave you a lovely packet for you to take back and look at during your leisure time. And I'm going to use the PowerPoint here to go through the packet with you. So what is Be in Charge? As Ms. Stanton said, we are an abstinence-focused or abstinence-based program. For school-based, we do have 3 components to our program I'll tell you more about in just a minute. We can serve 7th through 12th grades. That's really up to a county to decide what grade they want us in. I will tell you, based on the 6 years that we've been teaching this in other Tennessee schools, 7th, 8th, 9th grade are preferable. And it's just the way that the curriculum is worded. It's more on their age group. And if I had to pick a perfect grade, it would probably be 9th grade. As she said, it's free of charge. We're fully funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Adolescent Health, to go through 2020. So she shared some statistics with you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but every year 750,000 teenage women between the ages of 15 to 19 to become pregnant. Now, I know for this school law, they are focusing on ages 15 through 17. Our program looks at 15 through 19 because there is a pregnancy spike in teenagers after graduation. So just to share with you, your rate, I think, was 16.8 for 15 to 17-year-olds. For 15 to 19-year-olds, it's 31.7, and the national average is 26.6. The cost to taxpayers is estimated to be $10.9 billion. Now, this is a study that was done by the National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy. They looked at all of the costs associated with teen pregnancy, including WIC and TennCare and housing and incarceration. So this was state, local, and federal tax dollars, with the average tax dollar translation being $1,647. What we see, though, in the classroom translates a lot differently. Yes, it costs a lot of money. Yes, statistics are hard to look at when we're looking at our youth, but we have students that lack a basic understanding of puberty, human reproduction, and anatomy. They don't know how babies were made. And I could spend a lot of time telling you some stories about things that we've heard in the classroom, but I think as members of the school board, you're very well aware of some of those things. We have students commonly quote misinformation and incorrect information on pregnancy and disease prevention. A lot of students that will tell us, because we ask, we do encourage them to go home and talk to a trusted adult, talk to your parents, as the law requires us to do. We have a lot of students that will say, I'm not talking to my parents about this, or my parents won't talk to me about this, but we do encourage it. And then the one that's the most disturbing to me is not understanding the concepts of a healthy relationship, things like consent, things like texting my girlfriend 17 times a day demanding to know where she is. That's not okay. Again, statistics on sexually transmitted diseases. Right now, the CDC just came out with a new stat. Typically, we've told people that of the 19 million new STD diagnoses every year, teenagers account for 50%. So now the CDC is saying that teenagers account for 2/3. So that's increasing our sexually transmitted disease rates. Anybody know what the most common STD for teenagers is? You want to guess? Chlamydia, yep. Students have no understanding about HIV. Now, I graduated 100,000 years ago in the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, so we heard a lot about this. We were educated a lot. Our students today don't know what this is, or they saw something on Facebook about an article and some guy and he was cured, right? There is no cure for HIV. It's important for them to know that. It's important for them to know that there's 1.2 million new diagnoses every year in the United States. And it's estimated that's probably 20% higher because 1 in 5 people with HIV don't yet know that they have it. And again, young people ages 13 to 29% account for 39% of all new HIV infections. So those are some pretty scary statistics. In addition, we have a lot of students that say they don't know what it is or have never heard of it. So here's where Be in Charge comes into the program. We call ourselves Big Bertha, the three-headed beast behind closed doors, because we have 3 heads to our program. We call ourselves Big Bertha because our first go-around with this was 5 years, $5 million, 26 counties. This time it's 5 years, $10 million, and 85 counties. So we're expanding, which is what's brought us here to you today. For my side of it, the school-based implementation, we do use an evidence-based model called Making a Difference. We did bring it with us tonight. It's actually 200 pages. It'll feel like 800 pages if you want to read it, but if you wanted to look through that tonight, we would certainly make that available to you or set up an appointment at another time for you to look through it. We are abstinence-focused, we are evidence-based, and we are law-compliant and cohesive with the Tennessee core curriculum. We have several topics in our curriculum. It's not just an AIDS is or pregnancy is. We focus on much more than that. The whole structure of the curriculum is around goal setting and getting them to focus on their future and where they want to be in 5 years or 10 years, and then the decisions that they need to make to get there. We talk about developing healthy attitudes and belief systems. I should not have had that grande coffee on my way up here. I'm talking too fast. We talk about responding to peer and partner pressure, refusal skill sets. If we're focusing on abstinence as your prevention method for pregnancy and disease, but I don't tell you how to get out of those risky situations, I've not helped you very much. So that's what the refusal skill set does. Again, law compliant. Tennessee core components, of course, health, also a lot of family consumer science, and ROTC. And I did not know this until my father became an ROTC teacher and told me that every other year they actually have to address this. It's actually in their textbook. Implementation, in a perfect world, we would have 8 hours. But your school time is valuable, your class time is valuable, and you have other things that have to be taught. So we've worked with our developer to come down to a 5-hour version. And as it's been said, this hits many of the core components of health, family, consumer science. We have to have a minimum of 8 students, a maximum of 45. Parent guardian permission is required. We do a couple of things during our program. In addition to the education, it's called a demographic survey, and we seek permission to do that on the parent consent form so they know that we're doing this. We're asking for demographic questions. It's what grade are you in? What gender are you? Do you identify as Hispanic or Latino? And what is your race or ethnicity? Those are confidential, anonymous, and they can choose not to answer if they don't want to. In some classrooms, we'll select classrooms to do our outcome survey, which is going to test their knowledge, skills, and attitudes based on what we've taught them. And we select that based on how much time we had. And this is data that a lot of school boards like to see because it will show you the changes in their knowledge, the changes in their skills, the changes in their attitudes. And again, anonymous, confidential, we seek parent guardian consent for that. We have 2 options that we offer to schools, abstinence only and abstinence plus. Abstinence only is there's no information in the curriculum on contraception provided whatsoever. But it's not true abstinence only because if a student asks about condoms or birth control, the law allows us to answer that. And we will with medical accuracy, always focusing on abstinence, making sure that any questions about contraception are answered in a risk reduction, not a risk avoidance type answer. As the program coordinator, I like the Abstinence Plus because it gives my staff a script to follow. So when students are asking questions right there in front of them, they have the way that they can answer that within the confines of the law, which makes parents happy, makes school boards happy. But again, that is up to the school board to decide what you would want in your classrooms. And that's it in a nutshell. The other 2 components that we have, I want to mention really quickly. One is a community piece, and we have been approaching some of the community organizations in your area, such as your juvenile justice. And so those folks are teaching more comprehensive. Those are foster care settings, group homes, based on the venue. So if you hear someone go, oh, be in charge, they're the ones that were teaching those kids how to put on condoms. It was not the school-based side. So let me be very clear. We are abstinence only in the school-based side. It is illegal for us to distribute or demonstrate in the classroom. So obviously we would not do that. The other component that we have is outreach. And Tabitha's going to, did you bring the comic book? Our outreach side does a lot of cool things. They go and do trainings. So if this is something your school wanted to do, we could train your teachers on how to teach this once we're gone. Our grant's over in 2020, so in the meantime, we can work with your teachers and train them and provide them with the materials to continue teaching this once we're gone free of charge. We also present at state and national conferences, and something we're most proud of are our comic books. We won a Davy Award for this. It's a comic book on sexting, which I'm sure you guys are aware is a very significant problem amongst our adolescents. But this is written to appeal to a middle schooler. We actually hired a comic book artist, And there's a handout in here for a teacher to use if she wanted to teach from this. The handout is something she could pull out and grade. This was our first one on sexting. Our second one just came out on drugs and alcohol, and bullying and violence, and our third one will be on drugs and alcohol. So we have all kinds of things that we can offer community if you all are interested. Do you all have any questions for me? In your packet on the right-hand side, it's pretty much everything I just told you without the lovely PowerPoint. On the left-hand side is a copy of our parent guardian permission slip if you wanted to see what we sent home. There is a copy of this survey, both the demographic and the local. And then there's a purple handout, ways your school can support Be in Charge, which is a really nice way of us saying, here's what we need from you to do the program. Were there any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I think you mentioned that the ninth grade would be the, I guess, the target grade.
Mm-hmm.
Would you hold one class, or would you go around to each school?
We go around to
ninth
each
grade?
school, yes, sir. The ideal setting is whatever the classroom size is, 25, 30 students. Sometimes they might combine if it's two smaller classes. We send a trained person in to do the teaching, and we have schools, for example, in Cheatham County, where we go 4 times a year because every 9 weeks they get a new group of students in their health class. And if they have 2 ninth grade classes, we'll go teach the 2 ninth grade classes. If they have 6, we'll go teach those 6 classes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for coming. This is an item that can be very controversial in some households. And you said that the family has the ability to opt out of it. How many families opt out?
There's a couple of things that come into play with that. Number one is the alternative placement of students. So I can tell you that if the alternative placement is gym, we're going to get a lot of no's. And I don't really think all of those are parent no's. I think some of those are I want to go to gym no's. Actual parents that call me is a really small amount. I was very surprised by that. So I would say maybe I get 1 phone call a month. I think you just went and met with a family.
I did. I met with, I'm teaching next week at E.O. Kaufman in Lawrenceburg. We had one of the children in the class. Her father is a pastor, and he was very concerned about what we were going to teach. I'm teaching in Giles County this week. He came and we sat together for an hour and a half in the teacher's lounge, and he went through my curriculum page by page and asked questions and ended up signing the form and allowing his daughter into our class. So our curriculum is available at any time that a parent has a question or a concern.
But it depends upon the school district as well. There's some schools where we go in where we might have a return of 50 to 60%. Other counties where it's 100%. I just taught at Hickman County where we had 100% return. And I think it's because the teachers, the alternative, if you opted out, there was a written assignment. And the students didn't want to do the written assignment. And it wasn't punitive. It was just, they're getting a participation grade. Here's what you need to do to earn your participation grade.
Okay. Well, you know, I wish it was something that could be handled at the household level, and remove the need for the schools to have to get into it. But it's evident that that doesn't always happen. And so we've got to find the proper balance. But also, it's not just pregnancy. It like I say, it relates or corresponds with so much other stuff too, rape,
Absolutely.
Disease, and all
I mean, I
types
could
of other
spend the
factors.
next 3 hours like expanding upon
And,
what this topic means, but we are as transparent as humanly possible. We send home 30-day notification in compliance with the law. We work with the teacher to do that. If you need 300 copies, we'll drop off 300 copies. Then if a parent our phone numbers and emails are on the form. If they call us, we will call them back. We will meet them at McDonald's, Starbucks, the teacher's lounge. I had a parent waiting on me in the hallway before class, which was not optimal because I had a class to teach, but we will do whatever we can. At the end of the day, and I just said this to a parent in Sumner County, if you're not comfortable, please opt out because you're the parent and you know your student better than anybody else. So.
Okay.
I
and
will
then-
interject, though, the greatest thing about this curriculum is it does teach that skill set. And even though we're talking about sexual health, this skill set is perfect for any type of peer pressure situation. So we have non-sexual scenarios where, skipping school, rumors, bullying. And so the skill set that's taught can really be translated into any type of peer pressure situation.
Okay. You said your course has been sort of condensed down to five hours. What's your breakdown on the 5 hours? Is it 5 or 2 blocks, or how do you break down the 5 hours?
The curriculum itself is 8 modules long, with each module being an hour. So the breakdown would depend upon the class schedule. So if it's a block schedule where it's an hour and 15 or an hour and a half, then it's only going to take us probably 3 days to teach it. But if it's a 50-minute, hour-long class, it's going to take us the full 5 days to teach that. And the way we were able to condense it is it has a lot of what I call fluff activities. We've learned the skill set. Now we're going to do 3 activities on how to do this skill set. Or we learned some factual information on HIV, so now we're going to play 4 games to reinforce HIV. We've taken out some of those extra games. It's what's allowed us to condense that down to 5 days.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, thank you for your time.
Lori, do you need us to?
I guess from our perspective, I would want the board to kind of decide whether or not we would want Centerstone. I think it's a great opportunity for our schools, again, because we want to keep our rates where they are. Ideally, I'd like for them to even be lower. This is one area that we have pretty good rates, but let's keep them there or get them lower. So we just wanted to share this with you because we know there were some concerns about what was going on. So we kind of wanted to present it to you all and get your feedback and follow your direction.
Now you have a health committee, right?
We do have a school health advisory committee, yes.
Okay. Have they looked at the curriculum?
No,
at
they
all?
have not,
Okay.
but we're meeting Wednesday, so, I mean, we could.
Okay. Go ahead, David.
I would just, personally, it would be nice to have them maybe look at the curriculum, maybe bring that back and kind of, we could have a discussion about what you guys thought of it at that point. And maybe
Okay.
how you would best, if you guys would want to move forward, how you would best see it fitting into what we're already doing.
Okay.
Because at this point, I really don't have any idea kind of where you would want to fit it or if it's even a good fit.
My thinking is the 9th grade lifetime wellness classes would probably be the ideal place to put it.
How many kids does that impact? I mean,
Everyone
kid
has
have
to take
get-
lifetime wellness,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So that is a way we could get them all. If you just focus on like gym, then you're going to miss the band kids, and
Right.
so lifetime wellness is a way to reach most of them. Now, if they're an ROTC, they don't have lifetime wellness necessarily, so that would be something we would have to look at. But because ROTC has it in their textbook, it might be comparable.
Okay. David.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Ms. Stanton, I just had a few questions for you. This is phenomenal as far as the statistics that we're looking at, where Murray County went down from, in 2010, 32, a rate of 32 per thousand, down to 16.9 in just 3 years. What's your theory as to why it's come down? And do you see this, is this a trend that's happening across the state, not just Murray County?
It is. And honestly, it's because of more awareness. I guess a few years ago, our kids aren't necessarily thinking of sexual intercourse. It's more gateway sexual activities, I think, is what we have problems with, which eventually lead to sexual intercourse, which could lead to teen pregnancy. But we are seeing this decrease across the board. It's not just Murray County. But again, I think it's education, awareness. Teen pregnancy isn't something that's like to be talked about, but perhaps it's easier to talk about teen pregnancy versus sexual intercourse with your child from a parent's perspective.
And so is it your opinion and recommendation to the board that this program that Centerstone offers would help to deal with some of those gateway activities? And maybe,
Yes, it would.
Now, I guess looking at the law, the family curriculum, we're fortunate in Murray County that we're under that threshold. So we don't have to have a policy. We don't have to adopt the state curriculum as far as the family education, correct?
Correct. We
But-
are currently in compliance.
Right. But I guess currently, right now, we do not, and Ms. Hargrove maybe will speak to this, we currently do not have a policy in place regarding family life curriculum. And I guess that caused me a little bit of pause, just that I know what Centerstone, what they were saying, that we do not talk about these things because that's against the law or whatever. But I think it may be prudent for us as a board, before we have a third party come in and start talking to our students and start talking about these sensitive subjects, that we have some clear guidelines in place from a policy perspective. And I don't know whether it's necessarily that we adopt something as detailed as what Williamson County had, or maybe what the state model has for us, but it may make some sense for the board to maybe think about that. Should we have some policy guidelines in place before we introduce that within the school system?
I would say that's completely up to you all. As far as a policy, it is curriculum, which is not necessarily policy, so it is somewhat two different things. If the board were to want to adopt a policy, I would recommend going with something like the model from Tennessee School Board Association. I'm familiar with Williamson County, and it is very detailed. I think you kind of put yourself in a bad place by being that detailed, because as statistics change, as the environment changes, if you're stuck to exactly this is what we need to teach, if we find in a couple years that, maybe we have higher rates of gonorrhea versus chlamydia here in Murray County, we might want to focus our efforts differently. So I think by locking it into a very detailed policy, I think it just kind of locks us in. The state school board model policy, I think, is great because it leaves it in you all's hands and the director's hands. And at the end of the day, it gives more local control.
Right, and I think that's something that the board maybe should talk through. Is this something we just want to leave to the discretion of administration to make those decisions as to how broad that curriculum is? And everybody may be okay with that. I know one of the topics is contraceptive. Is that okay with all the board members if that's a possibility that could be discussed in the classroom? Is it okay that abortion be discussed in the classroom? And so that's some of the things that I think Williamson County's policy maybe actually addresses, that board had actually said, okay, we do want these types of curriculums, but we are setting some parameters where we think we would prefer that these items not be discussed. If we don't have that in place, then it will be primarily up to the discretion of the administration. And that may be okay with the board too, but I just think it's something we need to be thinking through.
What are we teaching now? What are we covering? Any of these topics?
We do not have a consistent program out there. So every school could be doing something a little bit different based on what they're doing in Lifetime Wellness. And it's mainly through our Lifetime Wellness programs. But we do not have a consistent, and I guess that's part of what I like about the Centerstone program, is it provides a very consistent, comprehensive, we know exactly what's taught in every single school, which to me, I really like. As I try to report things up to the state, it sure makes it easier when we've got some consistency. So that's kind of one of the beauties, anyway, of the Centerstone program.
Okay. There again, I'm going to, I think it's great that we have made the drop in the pregnancy rate that we have, but I still at 16%, I think there's still a lot more unplanned pregnancy than what we need, and we could very easily jump back up above the 19.5 that quick. And so you feel like this Cornerstone program, Centerstone program would help maybe even continue to lower the pregnancy rate?
Yes, sir, I do. And I think it would also help with our STD rates.
Okay, thank you.
From what I've heard, I really like a couple things about this. One, it's evidence-based. It's the second time through the grant, so I'm assuming all the kinks got worked out. it would be consistent in all the schools. I like that there is the abstinence only and the contraceptive option. I think that empowers us as a board to say, what do we want for these kids? And I like that there's no cost to us, and yet it sounds like it's a tried and true program. I hadn't thought about that. Does it discuss, and this is also for you all from Centerstone, and thank you for coming, is abortion covered in any form or fashion in this?
We do a lot of training
It's against the
on what
law.
we call values-based questions. And those would be things that in my home I might feel one way about, and in your home you might feel another. So we do not, no, it is not a part of our curriculum. Have students brought it up in the past? Absolutely. The way we handle any kind of values-based controversial topic is we might say, that is a topic very worthy of conversation, but it's just not a part of the Be in Charge program. Or if a question is asked, I might say, well, abortion is a medical procedure that ends a pregnancy, and that's all I can say to you on that. If you need more information, you need to go home and talk to a parent or another adult you can trust. So we shut those down for obvious reasons. We're here to talk about prevention, so hopefully if we do our job correctly, we won't have to have those type conversations. So that's what we focus on.
And I believe it's not, the law, I don't
one
think you
other
can
question.
talk about abortion according to the law. Now, if a child asks,
Right.
you've got your standard answer.
Right, it's not a part of the
but-
curriculum, but it does come up from time to time.
Okay. Well, and personally, I like your answer on that. But I'm curious, in what you're currently doing, what's the split of abstinence only and the abstinence with contraceptive options?
The Abstinence Plus is new in this grant cycle. So through 2010 through 2015, we used our curriculum as written, which does not have a scripted part for the contraception. What we have done with our new grant cycle is to try to push a little bit forward because pregnancy rates have come down since the 90s across the United States, which is wonderful, but our disease rates are not. So this Abstinence Plus was our attempt to try to push ourselves a little bit further because we used to talk about this stuff in the classroom and then we just stopped. So I can tell you there are a handful as we are now presenting it that are going with the Abstinence Plus, usually in their high schools. So right now I have 23 active counties, service counties. I just started promoting Abstinence Plus, so to be fair, I did not give any, probably 20 of those the opportunity. Of the 3 that we have added, one of them did pass on their school board to do Abstinence Plus in their high school and abstinence only in middle school. And I just want to make sure you all understand that the abstinence only does not mean it's not talked about. If a student brings it up, then we have to address it with medical accuracy. Again, pointing out the fact that that's not risk avoidance. We're emphatically and exclusively promoting abstinence in accordance with the law, but the law does allow us to answer those questions, always pointing back to abstinence.
If I choose to look through the curriculum, will I see the contraceptive presentation
Do you have that in your book right now?
I have it on a jump drive out in my vehicle only because I'm teaching in Giles County this week, and so I actually just taught that contraception lesson earlier today at Richland High School. So I do have a copy of it on a jump drive, but I do not have a hard copy.
I can email that to you also. And where we got that is the developer Select Media has many sexual health curricula. So we pulled that contraception lesson from one of their other curricula and adapted it to be abstinence only, abstinence focused. A lot of these developers that make these evidence-based models are from New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia. So what is okay in their state is not okay in ours. So this contraception lesson, we had to remove some gateway language from and make it a true abstinence plus in that it is just strict fact-based. This is what birth control is. This is what condoms are. But abstinence is the only thing that's 100% effective. And we can, like I said, you can look at the curriculum, but that is not, it's brand new. I'm not trying to be evasive on the Abstinence Plus. It is literally something we've just started doing in the last month. But I can email it to you.
And you can see, and this is just one page of my curriculum that I just happened to open, and you can see all of the highlights and the stickers. I mean, this curriculum has been heavily We went through it line by line, word by word, trying to make it law compliant. So.
Yeah. It was written in the 90s, and it's been revised often, but there were statistics in there that just were not accurate anymore. So we've had to work with a developer to update those.
Well, and I have to say, that is a huge piece. Y'all kept saying, law compliant, and oh my gosh, if our teachers had to take, the information and then piece by piece compare to the law, I just think that would be such a resource, like waste of our resources if we can tap into, a developed curriculum.
Is that from doing this for 5 years, we always want to leave things in our community because we know that we're going to go away. We hope that we're going to get another grant, but we never know. And so we actually have a toolkit that has little grab-and-go lessons. All of our toolkits come with little jump drives that look like this right here, that have all of our handouts on it. So if you're having a problem in your school with, let's say, consent, like with the middle schoolers, boys smacking girls on the bottoms, well, you can pull out your little jump drive. Right here's all your information. Bam, it's right there at the teacher's fingers. They can pull off consent, teen pregnancy prevention. I'm trying to think of what else is on.
STDs, healthy relationships, and that's already
And
law
parents,
compliant too.
And so these are already, and they're available free. We leave them to all of our community. So we try to make sure that even after we leave, that the teachers still have the tools and the resources to continue the education that we've been providing in their schools.
Right, and I have a question, and it may be silly, but when you keep saying evidence-based, I mean, is this evidence that the kids are going to be able to answer the questions on what you taught, or evidence-based that you see our STDs drop? Or,
What the term evidence-based means in the biz, so to speak, is that it was developed by someone who then did a study, a sample study. They taught this, it was studied, they followed the students 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to see later on were they still making healthy decisions. So there's research backed behind this that if you wanted to look at, we could provide you with. So, you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask you.
All right.
This program, I assume that it is, but is this a perennial program as long as the grant is funded?
Yes, this is the second time they have received the grant, and this grant lasts until 2020.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is if we decided to do this, we'd start perhaps in our 9th grade. We teach all 9th grade classes in all of Murray County through year 2020.
Correct. And if Centerstone got the grant again and we were happy with the program, I think we could join in again. But I think probably one of the things that was just brought up is the fact that they teach our teachers. And that might be an area that some of our teachers have problems with. I mean, when you think about, it's a totally different topic that they have not probably learned much about, and then they're expected to teach it. So that's kind of another beauty of this program, is that they will provide resources, say in 2020, if this program is no longer funded, to where our teachers would have consistent resources at all the schools that they could use, rather than trying to piece things together.
Okay. And if we determined, say tonight, that we wanted to do this and gave you the green light, when would be the best time to start this? Would you start it this week, next week?
Well, I think we would work with each school, with the principal individually. I think it would have to be on the individual basis, and then we'd have to look at the school as far as testing. In fact, we were talking earlier, you've got to have that 30-day window for parental consent. I think one school they didn't reach last year just because they didn't have that 30-day window, because that parental consent is very important. So we would work individually with each school, to arrange that and get that scheduled with the lifetime wellness teachers.
Okay. Well, and I agree with you wholeheartedly when we talk about the policy being a little bit more broad than detailed. And I do think that if we get too much into the weeds with details, we do limit ourselves. This program is no cost to us. We're heading the right way for whatever reason, if it's statewide or if it's just countywide. But if we can improve those, I think that we should take advantage of it. And if we can give them a go ahead to do that this evening, perhaps, or at least get that ball rolling, I do think that we need to leave curriculum decisions to the administration, but we can talk about it while they're doing their planning. And if we want a policy, we can develop that while they're doing this as well. I don't see any downside to this except us waiting and not starting it as quickly as we can. Thanks.
Ms. Stanton, when is the, you said there was a meeting of your health council on Wednesday. What
Yes.
time do y'all meet?
It is at 2 o'clock, and it is right here. It's actually in room 104. And this will be on the agenda. I'm going to change the agenda. We had some other things, but I think this is probably priority, so
All right.
we will change the agenda. So please, if anyone would like to join us, please do so.
Mr. Lassiter.
I think that if we have a curriculum that explains, factual information to the children, and we're not trying to sway them one way or another, I think that personally, I think that's a great thing, because adults are kidding themselves if they think kids aren't hearing lots of information, lots of conflicting information. And with today's society, it's not a big deal to jump on the internet and find a ton of information that you then, as a child, has to sort out. Is this real? Is this not real? And, I think anything we can do to help steer them, like I say, in a factual environment and a factual decisions, I think would be a wonderful thing. And without looking at their curriculum, okay, I also like the idea that, there's a lot of risk-based things that children choose to do that have nothing to do with sex. There's people there's adults I won't get in the car with them because I know how they drive. And I know that if I'm with them, I am deliberately putting my life at risk by getting in the car with them. As an adult, it's easy for me to say, no, thank you. But, it's just one example of things our students and children have to go through. So if we can give them any kind of tools to make better decisions about their life, and all of these things will affect them, and as parents, guess who teen pregnancy affects? Unless these teens move out on their own, it affects grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles. And so, this is a community problem, and if we can help slow it down, I say, again, without looking at the curriculum, I like the idea.
Thank you. I just want to go back to one thing earlier. When we talked about that's not percentage numbers, correct?
Those are rates.
Okay, I just want to be clear because that's a big difference between 16% and 16.9.
Those are rates
females
per 1,000.
Per 1,000 females. It's a really big difference there. I just want to be clear on that. We do not have 16% of our females that are pregnant.
Yeah, that would be a
you.
much larger
I was
rate.
sweating a little when somebody said that. But to that point, I think this is definitely something we need to look into. I'm a little hesitant to jump right into it when the staff you guys haven't really reviewed the curriculum yet.
We have looked through it. I have it on a jump drive. I've got it with me. I have jump drives at the office. I could have made copies. But what we'll do for Wednesday is actually print it off so that there'll be hard copies.
To go with that point too, and I know you had said something too, that some of this, I guess, has been already covered in our ninth grade health classes.
We don't. It has, but we don't know what and what hasn't because we don't have anything consistent. It is left up to that classroom teacher, and it kind of goes back to the point that Mr. Lassiter had. It could be like the students. It could be a teacher getting online and trying to find the latest information because we don't have anything consistent. So it could be very different in one classroom to another.
Well, I guess my point on that is, I think clearly moving towards a consistent, uniform curriculum in this subject area is a good idea. But to me, it seems like, and no offense to you guys, but this may not be the perfect one for us. Maybe it's something we want to do internally. It sounds like we don't know yet because we really haven't surveyed our teachers to find out kind of what they're doing now. Maybe we've already got a teacher that's covering this, and you look at their curriculum that they've put together, and it's fantastic and it meets everything.
I don't know of anyone that has a curriculum that's put together.
Well, my point is we don't know yet.
Right.
So I guess I would be more cautious on jumping straight to the first thing that came along here. Maybe we want to look at this and figure out. And to be honest with what Mr. Bates said as well, I'd also really like for us as a board to make sure we're clear where we want to go, because I know there's been some discussion in the past about, do we want to outsource this, or do we want to have our own staff doing this so that we have maybe a little more control of exactly what's going on. I mean, again, we haven't really talked about it, so I don't know. We may decide one way or the other, but I think it's there's kind of two things here. Obviously, we need to move ahead with looking at what we're doing or what we want to do, and I would really like to have, you guys speak to us with some really good in-depth feedback about what the curriculum looks like. Maybe have some time to talk to some of the other teachers that are teaching at the various schools now and find out, this is, you may come back to us and say, this is light years ahead of what we're already doing. This covers everything we're doing, and we really need to quickly move on this, but we just don't know at this point. So that's what
Right.
I would like to see, is some more information in that regard.
Okay. And I think that, the good thing is we are in compliance with the law. So, if nothing else, and that gives us a little bit of time to plan exactly where we want to go. So,
Anything else? Do you feel like you have clear direction from the
I
board?
think so. So kind of going, this is my thinking, so y'all tell me if I'm right. On Wednesday, I'm going to make that our School Health Advisory Council agenda. I will have copies of the curriculum, allow folks time to go through them. I will do a survey of all of our lifetime wellness teachers, and really anyone that could be teaching sex education, because it does go beyond lifetime wellness, and compile that, and then maybe next month bring those results back to you all. Is that? Okay.
That sounds good.
And then next month, we'll also share what the School Health Advisory Council thought.
I think, too, as far as development of a policy, we're about to turn our policy manual over to TSBA. So instead of us trying to sort through what exactly we hash it out tonight, if at all possible, I would kind of like to punt that and see what are some suggestions they have, and possibly if they could give us, if we do want to poll everybody on the board and see, okay, are you okay with this? Are you not okay with this? I think they could probably direct us a little bit better than if we just kind of go at it kind of haphazardly tonight, if that's all right with everybody. But it sounds like Ms. Stanton's on a good track, and we appreciate the folks from Center Stone coming in and presenting. And Mr. Morris, one more thing.
I did have one more question. How quickly, timeline-wise, if you were to get the green light to move ahead with this program, how quickly would you be able to? I know there's the 30-day to kind of get the parent.
Right, so we have recently hired someone that's covering Lawrenceburg, and we also cover Murray County. He's going to be ready to go in 2 more weeks. He's transferring, very experienced, not much of paper, bringing in a brand new person. So a month, if you passed it today and we took 30-day notices out tomorrow, he would be ready to teach in a month.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I will say, Ms. Stanton, because of our plans with TSBA, I don't know if maybe it's possible for you to compile that information by the end of the month at the board meeting, just because I don't know that we're going to have a policy meeting next month while TSBA is looking at our
Sure.
policy manual.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
If I could add one more thing, we have had school boards that have asked us to go in and teach in one school with one teacher to see how that worked out and get feedback from the teacher. So that, just to throw that out there, if that was something you wanted to consider.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
And we'll now move on to some transportation. Turn this over to you, Mr. Perryman.
I apologize for bringing water up here with me, but my voice has been doing some very weird things over the last couple of days, and I want to make sure you can understand me. I'm going to give you a handout just as we start. As we brought these policies originally became before you in July, and I had just moved into this position. I believe at that time, Mr. Lindsay asked us to delay them, kind of see what we thought was going on once I had a better grip on where we were. And like I say, as we talked through this, you may have wished at the end of the night that we went through them in July. But My goal tonight is, and as I met with Mr. Breeden today, we want to be just as transparent to you as we can. And if it's okay with you, sort of give you some crash course in pupil transportation, because as he and I talked today, I don't think that's happened. I think that some of you have been on the board have not been told a whole lot about what goes on in that department and actually what we entail day to day as we move forward. So we want to share some numbers with you. I, on this sheet, have broken down some basic numbers for you. Some of them will be reflected up here as well as I talk through. They're not displayed necessarily in the same format, so whichever one you wish to look through, please do. Just so you know, on a daily basis, we have 110 school buses that run the road. Of those 110 school buses, 84 of those buses are route buses, or they are what you generally consider the bus that comes by the house, okay? Of those 84, we break them down into, and I'm going to give you lots of information, so if I go too fast, just let me know. Of those 84 route buses, 34 of those buses run one route in the morning, one route in the afternoon. 44 of those buses run two routes, meaning they either leave Central, drop kids off at home, and then go to an elementary school and carry another load home. Or in some cases, they may leave like E.A. Cox, take a group of students home, and then return to E.A. Cox. But they run two routes in the morning, two routes in the afternoon. We do have 6 buses in our district that run 3 routes, and that's 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. Of our buses, we have, of the big buses that we're talking about in this case, we have 26 buses that are 90-passenger buses, and we have 48 buses that are 78-passenger buses. Capacity for a school bus is based on 3 students to a seat, okay? 3 students to a seat works very well with elementary-age students. When you get to high school-age students, 2 to a seat works most of the time. However, there are times somebody needs a seat for themselves. And so if you look at that, capacity drops kind of overall pretty quickly for middle school and high school. We have the 2 different sizes because in recent years, Maury County has moved away from 78 passenger buses and into 90. And the reasoning for that was we can get 12 more students on a bus, when in reality, for a middle school or high school, you're probably getting 6 to 8 more students on a bus. I will go a little bit into that a little bit later about some issues that we see there. But we have 84 buses that run those routes. We have 26 buses that run special ed routes. All of those buses run one route, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and they do home-to-home delivery. They actually go up driveways. They go up. I was amazed at how much money I spend on gravel for people's driveways because our buses have to turn around in their driveways and they can't sink, and that happens sometimes. So we actually gravel certain areas of people's homes if a bus is required to go up a long way, especially out in the country some places. We have 9 buses on our lot that are considered spare buses that are there in case something happens. As you know, we've recently had a bus vandalized, so right now we're running a spare bus in that case. We have 3 special ed spare buses. One of those was the one that was in the Christmas parade, so they come in handy and are of good use. And then we have 10 activity buses. And Mr. Breeden and I wanted to discuss this with you because we're not sure this has ever been told to the board. We have 10 buses that are assigned to either a middle school, a high school, or a unit school. They are maintained by my department. The only thing the school does is provide a driver and provide the fuel for those buses. Now, you can see right now we have 10 buses that are at schools, and I have 9 sub-buses. In the last 2 weeks, I've been forced to pull 3 activity buses back into my department because we were short on the number of buses that we were running. And you can see the little red note out to the side on your paper. I currently have 2 buses that have been removed from service. The reason being is that the cost to fix these 2 buses, they're both buses that are 14 and 15 years old, the cost to fix them outweighs the lifespan that they would give us. One of them is due to roll off at the end of this year. The other one is due to roll off at the end of next year. Just for what they are and for the amount that it would cost, we would pull them down. So we currently are operating 130 school buses. You can see on your paper there, we went ahead and I talked about the different buses. We run 4 different kinds of routes. We run regular routes, special needs routes, midday buses. If you've noticed, you may see buses running all over the county during the middle of the day. We have students that go to Northfield in the morning and come back from Northfield in the afternoon for the Northfield Academy. However, we make about 4 runs during the middle of the day for culinary, for auto mechanics, for vocational welding, that type of thing. And we bring students from all of the high schools, every high school in the county, back and forth to Northfield. Also, work-based learning is with special needs students. And we have about 6 buses that run during the day and take special needs students from our high schools out into different workplaces, and they work throughout the day in the community. And then we run tutoring buses for those 4 schools that you see there. Actually, when I was getting out of my car, the tutoring buses were checking back in on the lot, and they were beginning to. So we run buses leaving our lot in the morning from 6 a.m., and our last bus generally pulls back on our lot at about 6:15 at night, and we run during the day. As I go through this, I'm not going to discuss field trips or ball games, anything like that. So any of the numbers you see will just be numbers that we run on a one-day basis. Of our regular buses, I said there were 84. We do run 140 routes. That's 140 in the morning, 140 in the afternoon, so it's actually 280. We service all 21 schools, and we run on those buses a combined 6,250 miles a day. They average 74 miles per bus. We haul on those buses 10,050 students a day. Now, that doubles up, because if you ride in the morning, you ride in the afternoon, you rode twice, but we still hauled you. We carry approximately, if you look at your numbers, 1,000 more students home in the afternoon than we take to school in the morning. On our special ed buses, they do run 26 routes, that is morning and afternoon. We service 20 schools. Hampshire is not serviced by a special ed bus. We do not have one that goes down there. And you can see they run 2,160 miles and actually run a larger distance on average than our regular ed buses. Now, they have 160 plus riders, and I misspelled riders, and I just saw that. I apologize for that. Per day, that's about 6 per bus. You ask about the number being low. 1, it is because of the average miles that they go a day, and 2 is because of home delivery. We do not leave a special ed student unless we know they were turned over to an adult. So our radios a lot of times in the afternoons go crazy because mom's been at Walmart, mom's not home, and the bus is sitting somewhere waiting on mom to come home. And my dispatchers play phone tag between mom, who's calling the office, and I'm on my way home from Walmart, and the driver going, "Where's mom?" So we actually run with that. So we do carry a lot fewer kids with those, but we do go a lot further, and actually the time on those is a little bit longer as well. Midday buses and tutoring, you see we run about 20 buses, about 800 miles a day, about 2,000 or about 200 students. So on our total miles on a standard day, no field trips, no nothing, 9,210 miles a day, 10,410 riders per day. I'm starting my disclaimer right now. You'll see this come up over and over. I currently have 14 buses that are at or above capacity. That'll come back. So, before we get into that, I want to tell you about some things we've done this year. As I came into this position, I believe one of the things I talked to maybe Mr. Moore or Mr. Lindsay on the front end about was I got to a department where they were drawing bus routes with color pencils. And I said, this can't be happening in 2015. And so we went to work immediately looking on the technology that we use in our department. We are currently using a routing software called Edulog. It is one that as we've gone through time, both our tech department, I believe, Kenny will vouch for this, and our department at transportation have not been very pleased with what we are receiving. So we started about looking at different companies that could help us with what we're doing and how could we be more effective and better serve our students. We have kind of settled on a company, it's Tyler Technologies, and they offer a service called VersaTrans. This will come before you this month. Actually, I turned in everything today. I will tell you, it is going to be completely funded out of my funds, and it's going to be quite a large number, about $170,000, and we're going to move around. But what it will do is replace Edgelog. We're going to pay for it out of our transportation fuel. The numbers that I gave you today, as I told Mr. Breeden today, it was painstaking to get the information together. We did, it involved everyone in my department to come up with the numbers that we've got. This system will give us these numbers on a daily basis. It will talk with iNow, which is our student management system, every night at midnight. So when a student rolls in, if they register today at midnight when the two systems talk, tomorrow morning when my ladies sit down at their desk, there will be a note when they log in that tells them, David Moore is new to our district. He lives at such and such. He has a sister, and they need transportation. They will know immediately that he's here. This system has the same interactive portal that we have where a parent can look up where the bus is. It's a much friendlier portal, and they can actually get a little bit more information. We are going to install GPS on every bus that we have. It will actually be a signal that runs through Verizon. We will put a GPS tracker on every bus, and there will be a touch screen monitor on each one of our buses. This will have several purposes. One, we have to, by law, move to an electronic time clock. How do you clock in when over half of your drivers have the bus in their driveway? When they turn this bus on and they turn that screen on, they will have a code and they can clock in and out, and our timekeeping will be done through that. It will also upload immediately that information that my people see, and the driver will know David Moore's on my route this morning. If a picture of David Moore exists in iNow, the driver will have a picture on his screen of who that student is. And we will be able to track the kids that are on our bus each day. Probably the best thing that's going to come from this is that it has a fully interactive app, whereas you as a parent will be able to log in and connect with your bus, and you will know when the bus is late without someone having to notify you that the bus is late. That may not be a big deal to you guys, but when we have buses late every day, letting folks know is a huge deal. And a lot of times by the time we let them know, the bus is already running and it's at the house, and they go, why'd you call? Because the bus is already here. We're going to have an app where we can log in and we can see what's going on with that. We've spent a lot of time looking at this and trying to be proactive in, as communication comes with folks, how we can be kind of in the forefront of what we're doing so that our district knows what's going on with their kids. And that's the main thing, is trying to bring everything back to the students. So that is something that we have recognized as a need, and we're going to take care of. And I just wanted to share for you that it'll come to you, kind of give you the opportunity between now and the end of the month. If you have questions about what we're going to be doing, let us know, and we can help you with that. Kind of the big thing that comes from all of the policies tonight as I push forward to you is the walk zone policy, and I believe this was one that specifically Mr. Lindsay had asked us about. What I did was go forth with a couple of questions. Our walk zone is currently at 1.5 miles. That is because the state does not fund any transportation needs for a student under 1.5 miles. So Maury County standby has just been said, if we don't get paid, we're not taking you. Now, there are some modifications for that. In the past, if an area has been determined to be dangerous, we provide transportation. I'll give you the example of, once you pass Randolph Howell and Cox Middle School on Bear Creek Pike, there are some apartments on the left-hand side of the road as you go towards the interstate. We transport those children simply because Bear Creek Pike has been deemed a dangerous road, and we do not ask them to walk. However, we have only made these changes to our walk zone in the past upon request. And I will tell you that this is the most commonly asked question that I have received over the course of the year. There are many places where the walk zone has not been modified at all. I want to focus on two areas as we move forward tonight, give you some information. I do have information on all of our schools, but I didn't want to do that to you, so I'm going to focus on just two. The other thing that goes along with this is we currently hold the right to tell a student in our district by policy that they have to walk up to 0.6 of a mile to a bus stop. And so what I want to show you on this next slide is talking to the folks around us and then talking to 3 districts that are comparable in size to us. If you look at this, every county that touches Maury County is represented on this chart. The HTH is home to home, and I'll just tell you that on the front end. As you can see, I put Maury County in bold. Our walk zone is 1.5 miles. The next largest walk zone of the counties that we talk to, and again, these are the ones that surround us and the ones that are comparable in our size, is 0.3 of a mile. Williamson County's is 1/4 of a mile. Jackson Madison, if you'll notice in the notes on the side, they do have a walk zone in policy of 1 mile. I talked to 2 different people with Jackson Madison school system, and they said, if you want to ride the bus in Jackson Madison, we will pick you up. We do not care where you live, how close to school you are. We do not enforce this policy. We are the only district that I can find that is holding to a 1.5 mile policy. So that was the first thing coming out of walk zones is, are we in line with everyone else? The answer is no, we're not. We're not even close to in line. As far as stop distance, you can see that some of the smaller counties, and I did put the district rank on there so you would see where they do compare, because the obvious thing to jump to immediately is go, oh, well, they're little. They can do this. When I talked to them, they all reminded me, but look, we're little, but we work with less than what you've got. Many of those counties have a home-to-home, meaning they pick up every child, whether you're in town or you're in the country, they pick you up at your driveway. I don't think that it's possible for us to do that, but I just wanted you to see what they do. And you do see that Lewis and Marshall are working on a 1 block. Tipton and Williamson both have a 1/4 mile, and Wilson does operate on 0.3 of a mile. And I'll be happy to come back to this later on if you want to talk about it. But that's just kind of answering those questions. Are we in line with everyone else? What's everyone else doing as far as a service for their students? A couple of areas in particular I want to focus on are Mount Pleasant. I know Mount Pleasant came up in our discussions in July, and so I went to Mount Pleasant and actually rode the walk zone with Mr. Brown, and then talked through it with Mr. Eady as well. I'll give you some numbers in a little bit on what we're thinking. But these are the 2 areas that I just want to point out. This picture on the left is Main Street and 3rd Avenue. If you look in the distance behind the red car that's coming towards you, that's where the Shell station is, right past McDonald's. You're coming in from the airport. That red car's coming in from the airport. I picked this because if you live in the area called the Bottoms in Mount Pleasant, live down towards Smelter, you're in a walk zone if you live beside Smelter. We expect you to provide your own transportation to school. This is where the city has deemed the main crosswalk across Main Street to be. As Mr. Breeden and I were looking into that today, we want to say that no matter what our decision is, no matter what your decision is tonight, we've got to do a better job of talking to cities such as Mount Pleasant. You can see that paint is faded. There are no signs that necessarily say crosswalk there. There's nothing that indicates to a driver that there are going to be students crossing the road right through there. That's the first, and that's probably the most dangerous intersection that both Mr. Brown and Mr. Eady discussed with me. The one on the right is 3rd and Locust. It's just up the street if you turned and went up 3rd Avenue. If you look at that picture and you go north there, or go south, it's north on the, as my geography students used to say, up is north. It's actually south, but it's at the top of your screen. Mount Pleasant Elementary would be sitting right up here in the right-hand corner of that picture. That intersection as well is within about 1/4 of a mile of the school. And you can see that's, if you had a first grader, a kindergartner, that's a pretty hazardous intersection to navigate on your own. I'm going to go back in a minute to why we chose these two areas. The other area we chose to look at was Highland Park. The top picture we've all looked at, and that's why I wanted to put you there. If you go through the drive-through at Zaxby's and you turn out towards Advance Auto right there, that is the trailer park that you're looking directly into. If you live right there, you are in a no transport zone to Highland Park Elementary School for Maury County. So we are asking either parents to get those students there, or those students are navigating basically from Zaxby's to Highland Park on their own. Same thing at the bottom here. That's the intersection at Highland and West 17th. No matter what we decide tonight in talking to Mr. Breeden, we have to talk to the city of Columbia about making sure that if that remains a crosswalk, that it is in better shape than it is, because it is a danger to our students right now. One thing that came up in July also that was asked about were sex offenders within our walk zones. Maury County has 186 registered sex offenders. You can see the blue dots in the left-handed picture there. That's where they live. If you go to Tennessee Sex Offender Registry, you can actually click on those dots. It'll tell you who they are, where they live, what they did. That's the number that we're dealing with. The blue circle there is a 2-mile circle. I could not make it do 1.5 miles. You choose 1 mile or 2 miles. But since that walk zone for Highland, and that is the middle picture there, is 1.5 miles, the 2-mile circle kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at. Within 2 miles of Highland Park, there are 39 registered sex offenders. Only 22 students at Highland Park are currently being offered busing by the Maury County School System. There are over 300 students at Highland Park Elementary School. The circle on the far right is Mount Pleasant Elementary School. Same thing, it's a 2-mile radius. It has 8 sex offenders within there as well. And you can see the diamond in the middle is the school. The yellow are the sex offenders. And then if you pull that out to where, and as you zoom in on the map on the actual site, it'll take you down to the streets. You could see that the area that I was talking about crossing the road falls kind of in the middle of those. So those are just things we want to bring to you. That's what my goal tonight was, just simply to bring information to you before we discuss this policy so that we could see some things. In looking at where we stand policy-wise, you see that. I'm going to hit you right at the top there. I currently have 14 buses that are at or above capacity. I just got to get that back in one more time. To fix this, and you can see on your handout, I provided you the 14 buses that are at capacity. I provided you in the middle there the bus number, the schools that they serve, and if it's in bold, I'm giving you that it's a 90-passenger bus, means that I can't buy a bigger bus to give to them, because sometimes people say, just give them a bigger bus. That's the biggest bus I can give them. You can see that the bulk of those areas, I have 4 buses in Culleoka that are at or above capacity. I have buses in Spring Hill, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buses that serve Spring Hill that are at above capacity. And you can see Columbia buses fall in there as well. Now, when we were discussing this the other day, the question came up, and I know I'm kind of jumping back before I move forward with this slide. Please forgive me for doing that. As we discussed this the other day, the question came up that, you know, the student population of Maury County is not, it is increasing, but it has not significantly shot through the roof at this point. We're status quo with where we were. When I started teaching here 18 years ago to now, we're up about 1,000 to 1,500 kids. That's about it. Our ridership is up this year. We're up from about 7,500 last year to the 10,500, 10,400 I'm showing you this year. We don't necessarily have, I think the main thing is better data, is actually taking the time to dig in and say, what are we doing? There are buses on that list. Bus 69 is a Columbia bus. Bus 69 has been full for several years. There are students sitting in the floor on bus 69. It's been full for at least 3 years. Now, Mr. Breeden and I talked about this. I am in no way going to throw anything back beyond July, okay? But with that said, I think that it was just something that was known. It was something that you got what you got. You better work with what you got. And it's just been dealt with. I receive a call about bus 69 every week. We are working on it, but the problem is this. To adjust bus 69 in town, Our stops in town, we pick up anywhere from 4 to 10 kids. The trailer park across the road from the bus garage, we pick up 41 students at one time. So if I pick a street off of bus 69 and I shift it to a bus that is nearby, I can be shifting up to 20 students with one street. Then bus 69's not full, but the bus I'm shifting to is full. And what we have really looked at this year in our department is, what can we do? We have changed routes from the start of school. We've tried to adjust. We feel like that right now, the only thing we can do to safely transport students is immediately we need 5 buses. Now, I will tell you, if you gave me 5 buses tonight, I'm going to struggle tomorrow to have 5 drivers. But we need 5 buses. We watched a tape on bus 3 leaving Spring Hill Middle School this morning. It was from Friday afternoon. We counted it as a 78-passenger bus. It had 79 students on it. Those are 79 middle school students. Every bus in Spring Hill is either a 90-passenger or is in the works to be a 90-passenger, but the 90 passengers are only bridging the gap right now. I'm only picking up about 8 kids per bus, so I'm full. So the reason I come back to that at the top is that I'm going to address that again in a minute, but I just want to let you know where we are. But getting back to walk zones, okay? So as I'm telling you tonight, I got to figure out how to get 5 more buses on a route for us to transport what we're transporting right now safely. Getting back to walk zones, how would that impact what we need to do moving forward? Because we're out of whack, so that's the big question, is if we get in line with everyone else, what does that do to us? By reducing the walk zone from 1.5 miles to a 1/2 mile based on our numbers, we would offer transportation to approximately 800 students throughout the county. Based on average ridership and figuring in that we would have to figure 5 routes out for these other buses, we figured that that would be 5 additional buses in addition to the 5 I've just mentioned to you. That would be 10 buses. Reducing it to a 1/4 mile, which falls more in line with where everyone is, adds another 250. That's a total of 12 buses. If you do away with it completely, between 1/4 mile and 0 is negligible, we can do it with 12 buses. So as we move into the walk zone discussion, I just wanted to give you what we have found. I'm not saying to you one way or the other what we need to do with that, but I was asking July, how does this compare to everyone else, and what would it look like to fix it? And that's basically where we are. To go back to the 5 buses that are needed, Mr. Breeden and I have been talking. We're going to have to figure something out to get at least 3 buses in pretty soon. We have discussed with the folks at Mid-South what it looks like to lease buses, how it looks to lease them for the remainder of this year in hopes of something beginning for the beginning of next year. We've asked them, how quickly can you get us buses? Because the buses you approved in the fall, I still don't have yet. They won't be built until next month. So, and that's all 8 of them, the special ed buses and the transit buses. So we're hoping that by the end of March, 1st of April, I will have those new 8 buses. But those 8 buses that you approved in the fall replace 8 buses that go off. In fact, one of the 2 that are out of service has to come off this year. So I will gain 8 buses in March, April, and I will lose 9 buses at the end of the year. That's just kind of where we are. We're looking at next year having to ask for 8 more again, 6 regular ed buses, 2 special ed buses. That's just to keep the natural order of rolling buses and replacing them that we've had in place. So as we look at this, whether you say to me and we work out something to where we move forward to add buses at some point, if not, my activity buses at Central and at the unit schools that they are using for spring sports are probably going to be running routes before this year's over. They're not very excited about that. I've asked them about activity buses and what would you do without them, and Mr. White does not like that conversation. He kind of walks off from that conversation. We can't do it. But we're at that point that If I know we're full, and we're full in 3 areas, Spring Hill, we are full in Columbia, and we're full in Culleoka. Honestly, we've discussed oftentimes the growth going on in Spring Hill. My ridership has shot up in Culleoka more than anywhere else. We added 15 riders in 2 weeks in Culleoka. And so that's what we're seeing. On here, bus 38, that is a Culleoka bus, if everyone rode bus 38 in the morning that sometimes ride bus 38, there would be 100 students on bus 38 in the morning. Luckily, some of them play sports, some of them mama takes, sometimes granddaddy picks them up, but we're at that point. So what I wanted to do was just bring you information tonight. If I've given you too much, please tell me, and I won't do that again. If I've not given you enough, I'm sure we can go through and work on that. As we headed into the policies, at least to look at them, the big one was the walk zone. The other thing is the stop distance, is that 0.6 of a mile is out of whack. And I needed to, as Mr. Breeden and I were talking today, I'm telling you buses are full, and someone always says to me, but I saw a bus the other day that was half full leaving the school. Please know that many of our buses leave one school, go to another school. Please also know that a child can only ride a school bus for an hour and a half one way. The driver on bus 55 had an asthma attack right before Christmas. She left Spring Hill High School, got to Cox Middle School to pick up the second part of her load, had an asthma attack. I went to Cox Middle School and took the bus and delivered home. I will tell you that about 2 hours later, I pulled onto the bus garage lot, and I had dropped the last child off from leaving Cox, not from leaving Spring Hill, from leaving Cox at about 1 hour and 28. And it was a long, long run. Ran all the way to Marshall County on Sawmill Pike. So when you see buses sometimes that are not brimming with children, it may be because of the distance that they have to run and sometimes the places that they have to go. We're trying to adjust that. We're trying to make that better. Going back to Versatrans and making that purchase, that's one of the goals, is to be able to have a better number, to have a better way of fixing things and monitoring things. But I think we're kind of at a point where things were just kind of left for a while at, this is what you got. And then unfortunately, at some point that breaks. So on the front end, that's kind of everything I've got. If there's anything you want me to elaborate on, please let me know. I do know, and I know that we're moving to TSBA looking at policies, but we had these policies ready beforehand, so if you want to look at them, I'm good with looking at anything and answering any questions you have.
If at all possible, I'd like to go ahead and start looking at the policies, if that's all right with everybody, and just go one by one, and then that way you can ask your questions as related to the specific policy. So if there's some that we can check off, we can check them off. Do you have a comment?
I've got some questions that don't necessarily deal with the policy changes.
Well, one thing I want to say is I think that Mr. Perryman has given us a lot of really good information, but a lot of this is not going to be policy related as far as budget goes. It sounds to me like as far as
and again,
number of buses and things like that.
And again, in talking to Mr. Breeden, what we basically said was, as we come before you with any information, we don't feel like you've been given information on pupil transportation at all. So if we're going to talk about it, let's give that to you, and then we can pick and choose what we move through from there.
Yeah, let me jump in just real quick. I think some of these things are fundamentally budget questions.
Right.
And so we're going to have to make some determinations from a budgetary standpoint, I think, before we even look at these policy questions, because there's definitely a lot of funding issues associated if we make those policy changes. And so going forward, I guess what I would be wanting us to do as a board is possibly for the next meeting that we're getting ready to have this month in February, if these are necessary, Mr. Perryman, you're saying that you need 5 just now just to hold down the fort. That's not even getting into these other questions about, do we expand the walk zones and that sort of thing. So I guess what I would like to do is at our next meeting to be looking at the funding question, if that's going to be the proposal of the director and his office, because we've got a lot of funding budgetary items coming up, even probably a lot of substantial things. And so I don't know how that coordinates within all that. But I think once that is done, we may, as a part two of that, be looking at some of these other budgetary items. If we add additional buses, what is going to be the cost for that? Because I think that's what the board's going to have to make the determination first. Do we have the funding where we can do those things? If we can do those things, then I think it's proper to come back to this committee to make the policy changes. But I don't know if it's appropriate for us to make policy changes before we've looked at the funding questions first.
Go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
And again, that was part of the reason of throwing this, because we understood that, and we wanted to make sure we didn't give you a policy, let you change it, and then blindside you later on with, well, you made this policy. So that was something that we wanted to do.
And just roughly, Mr. Perriman, and I appreciate, let me just say real quick, I appreciate your presentation. This has been phenomenal. And this is the things that I think this board wants going forward, is to get information, because information is key.
Right.
We don't know whether to address issues unless these matters are brought to our attention and we're being informed of them. If we're informed of them, we can start trying to tackle some of these issues in a logical manner. But phenomenal presentation. One of the things you mentioned, did I hear you correctly that we're putting about 9,200 miles per day on these buses?
And that's before we do any field trips, any ball games. We're estimating that during football season, when we're sending 6 or 7 buses with Central and 4 with Spring Hill and Mount Pleasant, we're estimating we're putting about 11 to 11,500
Right.
miles.
And that
possibly,
number,
possibly a day.
To put meaning to that number, if I'm looking at this right, I Googled how wide the United States is from coast to coast, and it's about 2,600 miles. So that means our bus system is going back and forth across the continental United States about 3.5 times a day, if that figure is correct. Now, somebody might be able to.
And we actually have hardcored that number specifically more than once. We've had drivers log their odometer when they pulled off of wherever they started, home, the lot, wherever, and at the end of the day, give it to us again. And we're consistently coming up with about, it's about, I think 4,200.
I mean, it's a staggering. It's
4,600 in the morning, 4,600 in the afternoon, somewhere roughly through there.
But I do want to just real quick, if I can, these 5 additional buses that are currently needed, you're saying those needs have been out there for a while.
As best we can figure. I will say that Spring Hill and Culleoka have seen some tremendous growth this year. And Culleoka kind of caught us off guard because we were looking north, and then suddenly we're going, whoa, I've got 4 buses at Culleoka that are at or above capacity.
Right. Now, just real quick, and then I'm going to shut up and everybody else can start asking questions, but about roughly how much are we talking about per bus?
And Mr. Breeden and I actually, again, we knew these questions were coming. We're looking at, we have the capability, we talked to the folks at Mid-South, who we've bought buses through for as long as Maury County's been buying buses. We can have 12 buses ready to go day one of school based off of a Stewart County bid. Does not even have to be bid out. It meets our specs. It's already there. We can have 6 buses in 2 weeks from when we tell them we need buses. These are all 2016 to 2017 buses. That's at $90,006. Okay, that equals out to a little over $1 million, about $1,080,000. However, we did ask the same questions we thought you guys were going to ask, because this was not something that was seen as needed. This was something that, as we've gone through time, and I will tell you that as recently as November, I wouldn't have said we needed 5 buses. I was thinking more like 3, and as we moved through time, suddenly we're looking at tapes and seeing kids sit on the floor and seeing kids stacked up on aisleways. They do offer, as we purchased the other night, say Discovery Ed, and you purchased that on a buyout over 5 years. We have the same offer type things for that. So you can do $1,080,000 up front based off of the Stewart County bid. You can pay for it over 5 to 6 years as well, and that works as well. I have those numbers. We've got that available. I've shared those with Mr. Breeden. And we weren't planning on you going, hey, go buy 12 buses, but we knew the question would come up. If I said we needed 12, what's that going to cost? And, you know, I will say this. We got everyone to school this morning. We got everyone home this afternoon with what we have. My fear is this. You know, if your car has a capacity of 5 and your teenager's hauling 8 in it, it's okay unless something really bad happens. And that's my fear on the buses, is that we're okay, we're making it, we've been making it. And I'm going to tell you, in some cases, it's been happening for a long time. If something happens and there's an accident and that bus is above capacity, we've got a mess. And, you know, it's hard for the driver to be sitting in the seat and counting students and going, boom, I'm at 78, you got to get off. They're not going to do that. That's not anything they've been trained to, asked to do. And I will say these folks are, they're making it work and they're doing the best they can. But what we wanted to do, again, simply is bring this information to you because we know it's something that wasn't planned for and it's something that's very out of whack. But we did kind of look at what cost would be, how it could be differed across the district. And believe me, we're looking also at other things. We're looking at it if we can add a route to a bus and a bus goes back again. How feasible is that? In some cases, we might be able to do that, in some not. I know from being a principal that if you tell me we're adding a third route and these 40 kids are staying at school, now suddenly I've got 40 more kids at school after hours when everyone is technically supposed to be home. There's lots of fallout from that, and we've kind of worked through and talked through with different schools and are working on things. But I think to be safe, that's really where we are. Again, the reason I shared this up front was just simply because we knew these questions were coming about.
Just share one thing, because I think there may be some question as why would we bring this up in a policy meeting versus budget meeting. We talked about that, but we can't talk about the walk zone policy without we can't change the walk zone policy and not have this question answered. So we felt like we need to make this presentation to you. Talk about all of the issues with it probably made sense to put them all together in one package and let you know, because we probably can't do anything till we address these needs. And so we understand it's a budget consideration, and that's why we've looked at, a five-year payout, because none of this takes into consideration the 8 buses which are scheduled to be replaced, which typically the county, for the last several years, we've included that with our capital funds request, and in most years, I think that's the only capital funds they've given us. Now, there's some years they've given us more than that, but this last year, for instance, all the capital funds, they bought the buses, but they didn't fund anything else for us, capital funds. So we'll still need those buses plus this. So whether we would just tack this on and now make our bus request go from 8 to 20 to make our capital funds request, or if we would have to look at, making that a part of our budgetary consideration as well. I'm not sure how we got to that years ago where we gave that and the county said, we'll buy the buses, and that they don't give the capital money to us, they buy the buses and give the buses to us. And so it's some kind of arrangement that's been worked out. Maybe some of you have been on the board for a long time, know how that came to be. But so what we were thinking is we need to put all this in the mix before we get into that consideration. So policy meeting was the best time we had to do that, Ms. Parker. I'm sorry.
I think all the information is very, very valuable. I just think that it does put us to where we don't know how much we're going to spend on it. So I think some of these things may be a little bit premature, but it sounds like you guys have done all the legwork and all the homework as far as that. So, that the board should be able to make a decision at a later time on that. And I think this gives us a really good perspective on it. Mr. Pennings?
All the policies we have tonight, the one that I see that we really can't do anything about is scheduling and routing, 3.401, where it gives us the walk distance and that. Everything else I think we could do, but if we're going to change how far a child has to walk before we do transportation, I don't think we should be deciding on that one tonight because we don't know what we're going to do yet. And if we change that policy, you don't have the capacity to implement the
Can't do it.
policy.
You can't do it tonight.
And the
I
only
think-
one I see is 3.401 that we really can't do anything about tonight.
And I think he's right, from the ones that we brought before you. The rest of them, they don't necessarily impact what we do. They just are, some of it is just, as Ms. Alexander and I went through it, it's just overkill. It's just a lot of wordiness that makes things kind of hard to deal with in the others. So if you wanted to look at those, and again, we knew we were going to throw a bunch at you tonight, so we weren't expecting everything tonight. We just wanted to make sure you had that. And this was probably a better forum than doing it in front of a board meeting with the whole room packed full of people hearing everything, so.
Mr. Moore.
Saying that, I mean, can we go ahead and tackle these policies that don't have, I mean, I don't see why not.
I would like to.
If you-
Can we go through each one, and then if anybody has any questions, they can ask questions about
And
that
I guess
specific
just skip
policy.
3.401 at this point,
Right.
since that's the,
Let's start with 3.400, student transportation management. There's a section that's been struck out. Does anybody have any questions about that, or do you want to explain the purpose behind?
The purpose behind that was we could not find where that's ever been done. And we're more than willing to give you a report at any time that you want it, but the policy's not been followed to now. So we just said, take it out and we'll make that information available at any time if you want it.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have a question on that one? Do we want to individually make a motion to recommend, or just do them all at one time? Okay. We'll skip 3.401. Next one is 3.402, special use of school vehicles. Looks like there's some things that have been struck out and an addition. If you want to go ahead and explain that, Mr. Perryman.
The things that have been that have been taken out again were just kind of wordiness, just kind of things that we felt like were being accomplished or were kind of unnecessary. We're not, it doesn't change anything by removing those things. In yellow, the board shall be reimbursed individual school. We just opened that up, and I think we've actually fixed that with Dr. Marzak. Mr. Breeden and I discussed that. There's been an internal procedure in the past of if your child goes on a field trip, let's say they pay $3 for the field trip. That's supposed to pay for the busing and the sub. That money has been paid to the board. The board pays the driver, the board pays the sub. The mileage and the fuel cost were not reimbursed to my budget. It was just kept and spent. And I raised that as an issue, as to just simply, how can I have a budget and someone else keep my money? So I think we've worked through that with Dr. Marzak to where we're going to change that internally to where I get that back, just because I have no control over how many trips you do. So it's hard to manage a budget not knowing that. So we highlighted that prior to us having that discussion, but I think it's fixed. So.
Okay. Any questions from the board on that one? Go ahead, Dave.
so are you saying that is not going to be in there?
No, we can leave that in there just like that. I think it establishes what we needed, but it's gonna just be taken care of. We had kind of walked through that with him, and he agreed that would take care of itself.
Any other comments or concerns on 3.402? All right. Sure, Mr. Lester.
I see on line 30 where bus has been struck out on with the qualified drivers. So what did you have in mind for, what is a qualified driver?
We felt like that what that says is only we felt like it read that only bus drivers through my department. We felt it gave that kind of overtone that only bus drivers through. We have several drivers who drive for schools that are volunteers, that do hold the proper endorsements. They are licensed, they are volunteers, they are on our insurance. They're just drivers. And we just wanted to take that out because we felt like that could cloud up and it mean, well, you got to have someone from transportation do it, and that's not necessarily. Again, just wordiness.
And I do know in the past, and I don't know if the gentleman's still driving or not, but there was a retired driver that would drive for activities and things, and it was up to the school to
They contract.
negotiate and.
Yeah, there's a couple of retired school employees that still hold a license, and the schools just contract with them to take their activity bus. And it's a much cheaper cost for the school.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to 3.404, private vehicles.
And Ms. Alexander and I kind of went through, we think that 3.404 and the one immediately following it, 4.303, actually work in connection with one another. And that's why 4.303 was actually pulled in, was that, as the TSBA folks said the other night, sometimes there's conflict seemingly within your policies, and we felt like this was. We have always required a volunteer driver to turn their insurance over to the county. If you are an employee under 3.404, we require you turn your insurance over and have a certain amount of insurance. You have 100,000, 300,000, and 100,000 as your liability riders. And if you don't, then we do not allow our employees to transport children. By the same respect, we have in the past, as practice, let's say I'm a coach, and I do not have the proper insurance riders. I can't carry a child, but I could turn to a parent who's turned their insurance in, who does not have any sort of qualifications on the riders on their insurance. They could have minimum coverage. I can turn and say, can you take Johnny to the game? We felt like that if I can't haul or transport a child on behalf of the district, but yet I arrange transportation on behalf of the district with someone who does not meet the minimums that I'm required to have, if an accident occurs, then we're liable as the person who arranged transportation with someone that we wouldn't have approved had they worked for us. And so that's what we looked at, just simply. In the field trip policy, it just simply states they have insurance. In our policy, it states you have a certain amount. And what we wanted to just do is say, if you are going to transport a child on behalf of Maury County Schools in which the school arranged transportation, that you have to have these minimums. Now, if I as a coach say, you guys go home and I'll see you at the field at 5:30, I've turned them over to their parents. Now, if their parents work out someone to bring them, we're no longer involved. But if I arrange transportation with someone, we felt like we were putting the district in a bad place just because we weren't requiring them to have insurance. We actually kind of took this to principals, and we've had folks turning in insurance all year, and we've not had any issues with it at all. We're finding that folks are having the proper coverages. Am I misstating anything in that? And we just felt like this policy for employees said you had to have minimums. The field trip policy did not state that someone transporting students other than their own on our behalf to have any sort of minimum. I hope that's clear.
Mr. Morrison?
Help me understand, on line 10, you talk about what you have to turn in, and one of it says a specific permit for each trip involving students, including field trips. What is a specific permit?
What we did was we came up actually with a standard form this year that within that, let's say we're with the band, then if we know we're going to go to certain band activities, that band director has that form and it fills out the band activities that they would go through. And we had one standard form for all of those activities. We didn't specifically make them have 9 different forms just because we felt like that was overkill, but we did list and have specifics as to what they would be, how they would be transporting, or for what they would be transporting.
So a parent has to fill this out?
We have parents just fill out, they fill out basically their name, the school that they're with, and then we've been requiring them to turn in insurance. I mean, even when I was coaching 15 years ago, my baseball parents had to turn in insurance. So we didn't add them turning in anything or doing anything. We just had a form that said that they agree that they've got the proper coverages and that if they transport someone, it'll be for these events.
Okay.
And again, it's only if someone from the district intervenes and arranges that transportation. If it's a Saturday competition and a parent calls another parent and the school has nothing to do with it, we didn't really arrange it. But if I'm saying there are 20 kids and I need people to carry kids to a competition and I say, who can do it? And you say, well, I have a Suburban, then I have enlisted you on behalf of the school district. And we just felt like that to not have qualifications on the amount of insurance they had didn't make sense, as if the coach, I can't carry someone because I don't have insurance. That was kind of where we got to.
I guess my only concern is, for athletic teams, I think it's common knowledge that they have to do these things and turn in, as you said, they've been turning it in for years. But I can remember when my child was on the academic team, the coach there would say, we've got a competition at X on Saturday. I can take 4, who can take the rest? And we got them there.
Right.
We never turned in documentation for insurance. Thank goodness we didn't have any problems. But how do we communicate that?
We've done that this year, and we've done that through principals and through internal memos. And actually, what we asked each school to do this year was designate someone within their office staff that was in charge of field trips. Because you turn in a field trip form for every trip we go on, whether it's an athletic event, whether it is any sort of competition, anything, we turn in a field trip form. On that form, it asks specifically, how are the students going to be transported to this event? Do you need a school? Is the activity bus going to be used? Do you need a county bus? Is it going to be teachers that are carrying them? Is it going to be parents that are carrying them? That was already being asked of them anyway. What we've simply done this year is ask if it's going to be parents providing transportation for some student other than their own. If they carry their own, we don't have any business telling a parent you can't drive your kid around with whatever insurance. But if you're carrying someone else on our behalf, we've asked them to list the drivers, and then we simply check are those drivers that have turned in the proper insurance. And we're not having issue with getting that. I mean, we've had lots of luck this year with schools doing that. And again, we just felt like it was an internal safety net to know who's carrying our kids and where.
Mr. Moore.
I know I would ask you this earlier about driver's licenses. Or do we not need to include that? Or
We do, and we actually talked about that. We can include that. They do need to present to us, beyond their insurance, a copy of a valid driver's license. That wasn't in there, and when you emailed that back, we kind of looked at each other and said, oh, we didn't even think about that. But yes, yeah, we can include that very, very easily.
So just since I guess we're talking about the policy here, I'm going to assume that would need to be on like a
3.404 and 3.
page 2, like an item C or something, I guess. Is that what you're thinking in the red?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable? Okay.
Yes.
And then also on 3.404, just make it a D. 1D.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, part of this came from, as we were talking about it, as a principal, a lot of times I knew the volleyball team left. I didn't have a clue who left with who. Now, hopefully that coach always did know, but I will go back to let's climb back about 17 years ago when I was coaching. It wasn't always, I sometimes just was counting on, somebody to get to the park. And I didn't know where we were. And I think that in this day and age, our folks need to be better aware of if we're requiring students to get somewhere on our terms, then how are they getting there? And we're just trying to do a better job of doing that. And we actually made the suggestion to coaches or to sponsors when they do their meeting on the front end for a team or for a club and they meet with parents, go ahead and just notify the parents that this is something we're doing. And most folks are having them do all their paperwork in one night, and it's not a big deal at all.
Just as parent feedback, I could play 2 sports, and it was always arranged by the coach. They had my information, but I feel like it was very well organized. I mean, she would give me a list of who I was taking and who I was responsible for.
Some places and that's something we found that in 22 buildings, some places it was very well organized, and in some places there was no real organization to how folks were getting somewhere. So we just wanted to kind of give some parameters.
Very good. Did you have another?
I'll make a motion.
All right.
I just want to make a motion that, to accept the recommended changes to policies 3.400, 3.402, 3.404, and 4 is that correct? 4.303, as well as the changes we just mentioned about the items mentioned verbally, those to be added in. And that's my motion.
Second.
All right. We have a first and
I was adding the driver's license
license.
portion, correct, yes. I think that was the only change mentioned.
all right. You have some more discussion?
Question
Question, okay.
or comment, whatever. On 3.401 that we skipped over,
Yes, sir.
there's parts of that on there that don't just deal with distances and all that, where you have on page 2, starting at line 15, where it's the strike-throughs about the bus with children to go over bridges, and then line 25. Do we need to see about any reason to pass or not pass that tonight, or vote on that?
I think if we're gonna have this come back to us, I think let's just do that all at one time, and I think that we'll see this again. I don't think it's gonna
Is
mess
Mr.
you up too
Lashley's
much.
question, is there anything in those two items he said that need to be done tonight, or can those just wait until we take up?
No, that, the bridge issue was something that specifically Mr. Lindsay asked about, is how do we know that the bridge isn't of standard? And we just investigated, we do that through the county road department, and we just felt like it didn't need to be part of it, but no, it doesn't change anything tonight.
Okay. All right, well, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? All right, that is approved. Yes.
Just state real quick, I've got a note to add to the next agenda, these 5 immediate needs. So at our next regular meeting in this month, if you can do a presentation why we need these items, and if that's the recommendation of the director. And then I also have a note for our next budget meeting to add the discussion about this walk zone, if that's going to be some additional items that the director wants to present to us as part of the proposed budget. Thank you.
Mr. Pennings?
You mentioned leasing buses. Do you have a price on that at all yet?
We do, because one of the things, and I didn't get into, there's lots of layers to this. One of the things that triggered this was there is starting to be a track, there are going to be track teams developed at middle schools and high schools. And one of the things through that development was they were told that we would get them to Columbia State and to Spring Hill Middle School. And looking at that, that really kind of spurred the need of, beyond we're full, we don't have enough buses every afternoon. It takes 3 buses to get everyone where they need to be, and we don't always have 3 buses available. So we went ahead and contacted Mid-South Bus Center. They will lease us 3 buses on a 6-month term at $50 a day per bus. I think Mr. Breeden did the math, and it's a roughly $27,000, somewhere right through there. Worst case scenario, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, I could probably cover that through some of my money. I can't believe I just said that. But worst case scenario, whether this board moves forward and says yes to what I'm telling you about 5 immediate or anything, I'm probably going to have to lease 3 buses just to meet the needs of the track teams, because as we came about that discussion and determined how many we would need, there have been already 3 days in which I did not have 3 buses available. And then the problem is that the track teams will be traveling at the same time as dismissal, and I don't have buses to travel them always. And so we're probably, regardless of what's going to happen, by the end of February, going to have to look at bringing 3 buses in for
Yeah.
at least for the remainder of the year.
And I would ask, by the time we get to the final meeting, you all have already kind of thought through all that, other options, so that by the time you get to the board at the end of this month, you all are able to make a final recommendation or a final request.
Right, and again, that we had started the legwork on that, but we'll present everything to you at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Perriman.
And simply because I don't know, do we increase our insurance or do the leasing company carry
We
the
actually have
insurance?
to take them onto our insurance, and the way that would work is, it's kind of complicated. They will actually sell the buses to us, and at the end of 6 months, we sell them back to them for the same exact price, and then they bill us $50 a day per bus as a renter's fee. But yes, the buses do have to be in Murray County's, titled to Murray County, or we can't insure them. So it's not simply just leasing them and driving them. However, at the $50 a day, there is no cap on mileage. We could take those things to New Jersey and back if we wanted to. We can drive them as much as we want. But yes, they do have to fall on our insurance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
I have
Sorry
one
for
other
the length there. Sir.
And it really gets away from policy, just while we're talking buses. Why can't we take the activity buses and the spare buses and put them all under your jurisdiction? Why do we need to assign activity buses to the individual schools?
You're thinking just like I am. In fact, I've been talking to Mr. Breeden. We've started pulling activity buses back in. I kind of inherited that system. What I'm looking at for next year is that we're going to house everything at the garage, and then schools will be able to check buses out as needed. And let me give you, partially is because there are days that I need them. I need them to run routes. But the other thing is, buses sometimes sit at schools. Let's say there were 2 buses at Spring Hill High School 2 weeks ago that we opted to pull back into our fleet, and we went to get them. One of them had sat without running long enough that the brakes had locked up on it, and neither one of them would start. In my situation, and I don't know that you guys all know this, the maintenance department does not work for me. I subcontract out to Murray County Maintenance. So when I send them to Spring Hill High School to pick up 2 buses, I get a service fee, just like you would if you called the garage and said, hey, go get them. So sometimes coaches not keeping buses started, not keeping them running, school's not doing that, and me having to send folks to go get them, you're looking at $250 for me to simply get 2 buses from Spring Hill High School back to the bus garage. I can't absorb that cost. I can't have someone go to Hampshire to jump a bus off and turn around with a $70 service fee. So what we're going to do, and they aren't, I'm going to tell you right now, principals aren't happy, and you're going to have probably a couple of them come to you and say, oh, it'll never work. We're going to pull them in, and we're going to host them all at our site so that we can keep maintenance on them, so we can keep them going, we can keep them fueled, and then they're going to check them out much like you would a library book. And we maybe can do that through Follett or School Dude or somehow, but we're going to check them out to them. They can use them when they need them, and they're going to return them. The other thing that may do for them, too, is that they can check out a better bus sometimes than they have currently on site, especially for longer trips. We're going to give them the ability to not necessarily take the same bus every time, but we're working toward that. I just didn't feel like with as many trips for athletics and for school trips that have been signed off on right now, and I'm going to tell you right now, Central High School and Santa Fe are the 2 that just absolutely wear activity buses out. I didn't feel like it was fair to pull everything back in when they have already planned their calendar and their trips based on those buses being where they were. So we pulled with Thorns, both the Spring Hill High Schools. Right now, Mount Pleasant High School's bus is with us. Culleoka's is probably coming back to us. Hampshire has promised they will use theirs and keep it running, but we've only pulled in as needed right now. So, but yes, we're going to pull them all back.
Okay. The state's been wishy-washy about seat belts.
Mm-hmm.
Have they changed any of the seatbelt laws, or will it affect your capacities?
At the end of October, the National Highway Safety Council recommended that within the next 10 to 12 years, every state move to 3-point harnesses on school buses. That is a shoulder belt that will be 2 per seat. 90-passenger buses instantly become 60-passenger buses. So 78-passenger buses instantly become 52-passenger buses. The reason it's being held off on right now is simply the cost. Your fleet size would have to just skyrocket. Right now, to order a new transit bus, they're 6 months out, unless you can find some that have been built already. And to order a conventional bus, a bus with a nose, they are 9.5 months out. That's why when I said to you, we did investigating and found that we can have 12 buses by the start of school. We found them. We know where they are. But if you ordered them off of a bid, that's the distance. And that's why states are holding off right now, is if you go to that and you have to shoot your numbers through the roof, you can't get the buses anyway. If they go to that, let's say the state passes that, they will give us probably a 12 to 15-year phase-in. To whereas you buy new buses, you have to buy them based on the 3-point hitches, and then the buses you have are grandfathered until they're cycled to roll off anyway. But the troopers tell me when they come to do our inspections that it's gonna happen. It's just which assembly's willing to pull the trigger and actually make it happen.
Okay. One other question. How many routes do you have that you cannot use a 90-passenger bus on?
They are increasing, and let me tell you what our dilemma is. Many of the new neighborhoods in Spring Hill specifically, the streets are so tight, and the houses are being built so close to the road. There's a new neighborhood that D.H. Horton is building right off of Reserve Boulevard. There's specifically the one we're having the most trouble with is the neighborhood is at Meadowbrook, right behind Marvin Wright. We actually go in and hook a left and come back out to Derryberry Lane. There's a new road in the back, Lakota Drive. It is 1 mile from our stop. We cannot physically get a bus back there. Now, if they make that thing where you can drive straight through it and come back out on Derryberry, we can go through. If they don't, then not only does a 90-passenger bus not fit back there, a 78-passenger bus doesn't fit back there. And I've inquired with Murfreesboro and with Franklin and with several cities that have seen that type of development coming, and what they simply say is they don't go into them because the liability is so high. I mean, we hit trash cans on big streets, you know, and so running in there. But we have 90-passenger buses do present an issue because they are right at 41 feet long. And their tail whip from the back tire to the back of the bus is about 15 foot. We no longer go into Countryside Village, which is the park right across from where our garage is on Industrial Park. We used to go in, unload at the mailboxes, and turn out. We had a situation to where as the driver turned out, a lady in her van opened the driver door on her van. The tail whip on that 90-passenger bus just ate the door on the van. So we've had to say, we no longer go in here. So we're seeing, especially with the developments in Spring Hill, there are places that we don't fit with the current buses we have. We found out they make buses as small as 60 passengers, but we don't feel like we have enough neighborhoods right now that we could ever invest in one of those and it be feasible. So those are issues that we're coming up. And if you talk to people on like planning commissions, please remind them always that a 41-foot bus can't turn around on a small cul-de-sac. So those are things that we're seeing. But yes, we're seeing places we can't go.
Thank you, Mr. Perryman.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is discussion of the board self-evaluation.
Thank you, Chair Parker. We can be as quick or as long as you all want on this. You may remember during the ad hoc committee, we had to go over the director's evaluation. And the director, he had suggested that do we want to think about doing a board self-evaluation? And he actually provided an instrument to us, and we had that back in November, and I sent another copy of that to everybody. So that's an example, and I think the director, he got this from the superintendent's organization, so this is just kind of a form, standard board is self-evaluation. I went online, and you all may have found some things. There's other board self-evaluations out there, so it's different. You know, one size doesn't fit all, and I've got another example that you all can look at when it's being handed around. And of course, again, you all already have the director's example. I also noticed that some boards actually have policies that deal with the self-examination or self-evaluation. I've found that Knox County, they actually have a policy, and it has some guidelines for doing the self-evaluation. So I'll pass that around too if anybody wants to look at Knox County's policy. And of course, TSBA, they also offer a service for the board to do a self-evaluation. Looks like they charge $950 a day to do that. And it's sort of facilitated. And I'm not sure if it's going to be, it ends up being the same format where you have a form that you fill out each year. And maybe some of the other members can maybe chime in on that, because I think maybe TSBA said that we may have done a self-evaluation in the past. I don't know. Again, maybe some of the other board members can chime in on that. So, but anyway, really the choice of this committee and the board is, first of all, do we want to do a self-evaluation instrument like we do the director's evaluation? That's kind of the first question. And then if so, how do we want to do it? Do we just want to take a form off the shelf like the director had given us and just adopt that going forward? Or do we want to do something a little bit more? And I'm just going to briefly talk about that real quick. What I don't want, if we do say that we do want to do a self-evaluation, I just don't want to create more paperwork. I just don't want to be where we just have something else that, you know, we go through the routine of doing it, and it doesn't really accomplish anything. I think if we're going to do a self-evaluation, it should be for some purpose. So we could kind of think through it a little bit more. If we're evaluating ourselves, what is the characteristics that we're wanting to look for as a board? And it may be already covered in the form that we have, but are there some characteristics or goals that we want to try to shoot for as a board? And if so, do we need to be, you know, put a little bit more thought process into that? And so I've got an example from the Center for Public Education. They've got 8 characteristics of effective school boards. And they go through where they've done some research, and they've said, what are some of the things, if it's an effective school board for that district, what are those characteristics? And that may be something for us to think about, of going through the research and looking into where researchers have told us, hey, these are habits or routines or practices that an effective school board wants to model. If so, we could try to track that in our evaluation. But again, it kind of comes back to the first question is, do we want to do the board self-evaluation? I saw at the ad hoc committee there was some interest in doing that, but I think that's something that the committee needs to make a final determination. Is that what we want to do? And then the second question is, do you all want to do the form off the shelf, or do you all want to do something a little bit more detailed and in-depth? And my thought process on that is, if that's what the committee, the will of the committee is, maybe we could appoint a subcommittee of maybe 2 or 3 individuals to go and put some thought and some time into it, and then report back to the committee and make a proposal. So that's one maybe avenue of doing that. But again, I leave that up to the will of the committee. And so, Chair Parker, if you want to open the floor for anybody's thoughts or input.
Do we have any more?
In the Knox County one that you just handed out, personally, if I were to want us to do something like this, I like, they had a line item on there, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have the words, about using that evaluation as a tool. At the conclusion of well, here's what it says. At the conclusion of the evaluation, the board developed a series of board goals for the ensuing year. If we were to do something like this, that would be along the lines of what I would like to see, is to use it other than just a way to kind of do a checkup on ourselves, but to actually use it to build some goals from a year-to-year basis, if we were to do it. That would be kind of the main goal I would want to see out of this, is to actually have something come out of it, not just an evaluation where we look at it and go, okay, and it gets filed away somewhere.
Mr. Dudley?
Well, I too agree that if we're going to do it, there needs to be a reason why, and there needs to be something we're going to use this evaluation to do. I mean, just to fill out a piece of paper to throw over here in a cabinet and say, well, we did a self-evaluation is not doing us any good. So, I mean, if we got reasons and then as to why we want to do it and what we're going to do once we do it, you know, I don't have any problem with it. But I don't want to do it just because.
Well, I think when we originally started talking about this, we were talking about it in terms of we're making the director do an evaluation. Isn't it reasonable to make ourselves do an evaluation? So I don't know if there's been any conversation specifically with the director as to what benefit he might glean from us evaluating ourselves. You had conversations?
I will say, this was his idea because we had to do that as part of his contract, and that's part of the statute, that we are required to do his evaluation on an annual basis. But he asked, have we been doing a self-evaluation? So I gathered from that he'd had experience in other districts where they had done that sort of thing. And so he asked that, and I could find where we had been doing that in the past. And so that's why I brought it to the committee's attention to see what their thoughts are. But at some point, maybe just to keep the discussion going in a timely manner, I would like to poll the committee and see if there's a majority or a consensus that want to do the self-evaluation. And then then we can get into the question of, do we just go with the form that the example that the director provided us, or do we want to appoint a committee? And I'd like to take a poll of the committee as well on that at the appropriate time, Chair Parker.
Okay. Let's hear from Mr. Pennings.
We have done an evaluation through TSSBA before. As far as evaluating the school board director, we evaluate him because we pay him a heck of a lot of money. I don't make that kind of money, but I have nothing against evaluating the board.
Mr. Morrison?
Mr. Pennings is correct. We have had done a self-evaluation through TSBA in the past, and I think it's important to understand that when we do a self-evaluation, it's an evaluation of the board as a whole, not as individuals. And it's not an evaluation of how we can make certain subjects pass quicker because this side of the room doesn't do what we like them to do and this side does. It's actually about how we work together and how we can improve that. And I think that whatever we do, we want to be careful about how we do it. And I would not be in favor if we're going to evaluate ourselves and then judge ourselves on that evaluation. I think that needs to be a third party that does that so they can be completely honest with us, and we can't really say, well, Mr. Bates doesn't like this side, he likes that side better. We don't want a he said, she said type thing, and we certainly don't want to put any administration people on the spot because we could probably get some really hard feelings at that person if we accepted them to do it as well. So if we have something in mind that we want to improve and we evaluate based on those goals, then yes. And I will say, too, that I don't think the goals should be that we're going to increase our graduation rates because those are completely different. The evaluation has to do with the workings of this group, period, and how we can improve our relationships, how we can improve our efficiencies in meetings and not be here till 11:30 at night, perhaps. Those are lofty goals that we should approach, but not how we improve the school system necessarily. So.
At this time, I'm sorry, I didn't see yours, Mr. Lester.
The one example that we got online here that I was looking at, to me, a lot of this is, obviously, it's a self-evaluation, but it's also a self-reflection that in the past it's been said that we shouldn't use the director's evaluation as a method of beating someone up, but as a tool to where we can improve. And when I look at the one that I've got called up, I think it would be interesting to go through and see how each of us rate the different items that are on here, different items that we come up with. And I mean, it could be something as simple as, you know, there's a master agenda available to the public and media prior to the meeting. Maybe 10 people think that's true, and one says, you know, I don't think we're doing that. So to me, that was a good tool to say, well, you know, if you don't think we're doing that, how could we improve? Or what if half of us think, well, not quite half, but close to it, think, you know, hey, we could do better here, then I think we could all, as a board, look at that and say, okay, so what improvements do you suggest? Because right now, there's really not an opportunity for us to go through and have discussion amongst ourselves and say, I would like to see the board go here, or the board go there, or, you know, what if we did this? I mean, I know like tonight we had to, you know, this next item that's on here, discussion of committee structure. You know, I don't know if that's a policy committee item, but it's one of those that falls between the cracks. When do we ever do these things? And we should be sitting down, I think, more and going through them. So maybe this would give us an opportunity to go through and rate how as individuals we feel we're doing as a board, and have an opportunity to discuss ways we think we can do better.
Any other comments? With that being said, I think now would be a good time to go ahead and take that poll. I just ask anyone that is in favor of the board doing a self-evaluation, let's just raise our hand. All right, that was unanimous. Now the next question, I guess, is, are we comfortable with the form that's been provided, or do we want to customize a form to fit our particular board? If there are any comments on that, I'll open the floor up for that discussion. Mr. Moore?
Looking at the one we've got, I mean, I'm actually okay with it. I think this may be a bit of a learning curve for us. We may decide after we get done with it, we don't like it. But what I've seen so far, it seems to kind of hit the major aspects of what we do, and it seems like some of them, I'm not sure how much better we could get, other than once we make it through it, we may decide otherwise. Again, the only thing I would add to that, I mean, I know approving that, but I definitely would like us to, the second half of this, to definitely figure out as a board or as a committee or even a subcommittee what we're going to do with this information to make sure we're all on board with implementing it or making some improvements.
Yeah, and I was going to, Mr. Moore jumped before I was able to get that out, but I had kind of the same thought process that maybe this is a stage type thing. Maybe we go ahead and adopt the form that the director has provided us an example, but we make it a point of coming back and looking at this again, and maybe after we go through that first process, we realize, hey, I'd like to maybe modify this, but this may be a good starting point. So that may be maybe there's a middle ground where we start with the form, and then we maybe look at this again after we do the first go around of the self-evaluation.
Mr. Morrison?
Well, I'll just say again, I don't necessarily have a problem with us developing a form to evaluate ourselves. But if we develop a form to evaluate ourselves, then we develop the form that we evaluate ourselves with. I really think when we talk about evaluation, it should be a third-party instrument and a third party that's doing that. That way we assure ourselves that there's no bias in it from any of the members here. You know, it's all about polling. It's all how you ask the questions. And if we're making those questions up to ask about our own board, perhaps we put some sort of spin, if you will, on those things. I just think that needs to be a third party that does that for us.
Just, Mr. Morris, I just want to point out this particular form that the director provided us. My understanding, he received this from TOSS, so this is not his form. This is a third party that prepared this form. And certainly, if there's something on this particular form that the director's provided us, if we have any qualms about it, we could always make revisions to that. But again, this goes back to my original point. It just depends how much time we want to spend as a committee and as a board on this. We can spend as much time or as little time as the will of the committee.
Any other comments? I think we may be talking about apples and oranges there a little bit, as far as I think Mr. Morrison would like for the process to be facilitated as opposed to us, you know, doing it on our own, it seems like. Am I correct, Mr. Morrison? So I think we need to make a decision there as well. And we probably could use this form, but I think he's saying that even if we use this form, we need to have somebody else that comes in and kind of can help us interpret where we stand after that after that evaluation has been done. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it is, and again, I don't intend to spend a lot of time with this. My belief is that if we prepare the questions that we ask ourselves, we're not doing ourselves a service. And if we review the responses ourselves, we're not doing ourselves a service. We need a third-party, unbiased look at how we conduct our business.
Mr. Laster?
While I think sometimes that third party could help us, I mean, I'd like to see us go through, if we're going to do this, I'd like to see us do a form similar to this one. And I think that if we go through them, it's going to be pretty obvious that either, there's going to be numbers are going to be close, or there's going to be waves of highs and lows. And like I said, to me, this is a tool for us to have discussion amongst ourselves, not to bring in somebody that's going to say, well, I see the numbers are over here, so this is my suggestion to the board. And I think that we need to my knowledge, we have not sat down with just us and had conversation without third-party steerage as far as what we would like to see and what some of your goals are and different things like that. I mean, in the past, I know that it was not done with the boards in the past. So I think this could help us go through and get a good start. And if we see that, that it's not working out, we could say, hey, we need to bring somebody in. But I think it'd be a good start to just kind of go through and see where we're at on this and see how, as a group, we plot this out.
Mr. Moore?
Two things on that, and I kind of like where Mr. Lasser is going with that. Personally, and I know he's not here tonight, I would like to see how the directors had envisioned a board using this tool. Since he brought us this one, I would definitely be interested in that. And that said, I think Mr. Bates brought up the possibility of a subcommittee or a special committee of some kind that kind of maybe if we were to adopt something like or adopt this specific one, maybe have the director work with a subcommittee or something where they figure out how we would implement this or in what ways we could bring up maybe some of the things like Mr. Laster, because I see some questions here very easily that could be a great start to some discussions as board members about these could be those things that would help us get those discussions started, depending on how some of these were scored. So I think maybe some of this needs to be discussed with the director, and maybe we could figure out how we would implement or how we could use the data that would come out of this instrument.
So going forward, with the director not being here, do we want to gather that information from him before we make a final decision on the exact process for the self-evaluation? I think we've all agreed that we want to do a board self-evaluation, but as far as the exact process, whether we want it to be facilitated, whether we want to have a form, what exactly we're hoping to get out of it from the director's standpoint, since this was one of his suggestions, talk with him. Are we okay punting that? Mr. Moore?
Personally, I'd be willing to, again, just for my own benefit, to go through this evaluation. So I'm okay with adopting this evaluation, but in the second half of that being that we go ahead and start the discussion with the director on how he sees us implementing this, and wherever that leads, maybe that needs to be a kind of the second half of this.
Is that your motion?
My motion is to go ahead and adopt this instrument and move forward with how we want to implement it.
Do we have a second? Discussion? Okay. Mr. Morrison?
I certainly am not going to belabor this, and if we want to adopt that instrument, that's fine. But I haven't seen, I don't think, that instrument, and I don't know that anyone up here, because we put some this way and put some that way. So,
It's the same instrument you got in November, Mr. Morrison.
Sure.
I just wanted to know if when you all do that, will that be something that's public, or is that just something between you guys and you guys?
I believe it would be an open meeting. I mean, I think each individual would probably fill out the form, and then the sum of that would be brought forward, and then discussed as a group at an open meeting. All right, well, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead, unless there's any other discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Of the form. Adopting the form and discussion with the director on how to implement. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right. We'll go ahead and do a voice vote. No? Okay. So, Mr. Dudley, Mr. Beaver, Mr. Pennings, we're all no's. Is that correct? And Mr. Morrison, were you a no? Okay. I'll just go down the line. I'm a yes. Mr. Pennings? No. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lassiter?
Yes.
Mr. Bates? Yes. Mr. Morrison? Mr. Beaver? No. Ms. Powers? No. All right. So we have 5 yeses, and we have 4 noes and 1 abstain, so I don't think that will go forward. All right. We'll go. Yes, sir.
But now, does that not go, would that not go to the full board, just not with the recommendation of the committee?
I believe that could be added to the agenda by anybody. Mr. Bates?
Point of order, Ms. Parker. I think we have 9 members here. Did you say we had 5 yeses?
Yes.
All right, so I would think that the motion did pass. That's a majority of the members that were here and voting.
All right. Okay. So that motion did pass, and will go forward as a recommendation of the board. The next item is discussion of committee structure. I'm sorry. That was in regards to some conversation that had occurred about the way that we've adjusted the committees. There's not an actual policy at this point, I believe, that actually says the composition, how the composition of our committees are going to be structured. I know that Mr. Bates has been trying this out, and we've been very blessed tonight to have very good participation and attendance. I'll let Mr. Pennings.
Well, you all know how disappointed I was when we had the zoning meeting and we had to wait here for an hour and 15 minutes until we had enough people where we could actually discuss business and vote on it. I say let's let this go, and let's just see how it goes from now on, because we need everybody here. Because like on that Thursday evening, when the public is sitting out there and we're sitting up here, and you can't even start the meeting or have an official meeting, it sure makes us look bad. But from the turnout we have tonight, I would say let's just forget this for now, and if we need a policy in the future, we'll go ahead and talk about making a policy. That'd be my comment tonight.
Well, and I think, too, we're in the process of looking at our policy manual, and we now have a resource with TSBA where we can talk to them as to, efficiencies for other boards, how they handle committee structures, work sessions, things like that. And so perhaps we can get some feedback from them and bring that back to the board and continue to, have this active participation that we have tonight. It's been great. And, just kind of see where we go from there. Mr. Lassiter?
Personally, I mean, I'd like to be at all the meetings. Sometimes I don't make it. But in a lot of ways, yes, I want people here for discussion, but the action from the committees is really a non-binding action. I mean, we're really doing a work session, and one reason that in the past I've been opposed to work sessions is people have talked about, well, let's have an all-day work session and hammer all this stuff out and then go to a meeting. And I think that's way too much. But as far as waiting an hour and a half to have discussion, even if you went through the whole meeting and there's 4 people there, yes, is it a shame? Thank goodness that we are going through and we're videotaping the meetings. I noticed like tonight, we did not do roll call. When you watch the videos, I think it's really important to go through and have the roll calls, because if there's 4 people and there's 2 on this end and 2 on that end, the camera doesn't usually catch everyone, so you don't know who's here and who's not. But the point is, if that's all that's here, you can start discussion on time. You could go through the whole meeting with 4 people, have the discussion, and again, those that aren't there will not be involved in the discussion, but if we do a good job at recording it, they can watch it, keep up, show up at the meeting, and we may rehash it. You could have 11 of us here, and it's happened with us. We've had 11 people here, and we get to a regular board meeting, and we rehash the whole thing again. So I don't like doing that, but it is an option. And, so hopefully we'll have good turnout, but if we don't, like tonight, we didn't vote. There's question, Mr. Bates said yes, that, the item, the evaluation passed, but if it didn't, it can still get brought up at the main meeting. So other than not having to have a second, the loss is having the people here for discussion, but not progressing with the meeting.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you. On some of these things can be disappointing, but I think a lot of this is just we made some changes and we were trying some new things, and maybe some of these things we could have clarified beforehand, or maybe we didn't even think to clarify some of them. And I guess this fits into policy in that we may want to look at either making them policy or just procedures as a board of how we handle some of these things that come up, just so that we're not kind of trying to do these things on the fly. I think that may be helpful for us as a board to clarify some of these things, such as, when we moved to the 11-member committee structure, we just never really discussed the fact that a simple majority would fall under standard Robert's Rules of Orders of making something pass. It was just something we hadn't discussed. So, again, my opinion, it didn't matter which way it went. I just wanted to make sure, I just want us to be clear and upfront and everybody understand where we're at when we make these decisions so that we can make the best decisions we can and move forward with them. But I think some of these things that have been brought up as far as committee structure and some of these other things, I think it's good to talk about them, and I think we should, and maybe we should clarify some of these things. And they may just need to be clarified, and we call them board procedures. They're not actually put in policy, but some of them may rise to the level that we actually do need to put them into policy. And I think it's definitely something we should talk about on some of these different things.
Mr. Bates?
I was just going to say just real quick, just so everybody kind of understand my mindset. And of course, sometimes we set our goals high and they don't always happen, but sometimes we still want to try to set goals for ourselves. And what my goal of having all 11 members participating as part of the committee was to be inclusive. Now, I didn't do this, for my position as the chair. I did that for the membership, that I didn't want anybody to feel excluded. And I think that's part of my overall goal, is that we do things collaboratively. And I think we've got a history of that, and that's what I wanted to continue. And some of the things that we're trying to implement as a board are things that I'm thinking of for the future, not just us as members of the board right now, but members in the future when we roll off the board. And it can be an issue sometimes if you have where people are excluded from committees and you only have a certain few people and everybody else feels like they're on the outside looking in. They have no seat at the table and they don't have input. And that's one of the things I think is great with our board, is that we do allow input, and I think 11 viewpoints are better than one. It helps us to deliberate better and helps us to see our own blind side sometimes. There's things that when we get into discussion, we may think a certain thing and somebody else points out something. That's good. So that was my goal, is to be inclusive for all members so that all members could feel that they are participating in the committees and that they are not excluded from the things that are being discussed in committee and not excluded from votes that happen in committee. So they have an opportunity to be part of that process. And also my goal is to, and I know these things are not going to happen overnight. And so we do have to give a little bit of, I guess, hopefully an opportunity to see how it's going to work. And we can always circle back around if it doesn't work the way we planned, what we thought. We can always make additional changes. But my goal is for us to spend less time. And I say that because what I'm hoping is that if all members are participating in the committees and they've had an opportunity to be there, they've had opportunity to vote, and you're right, Mr. Lassiter, certainly every board member will be free. If they want to rehash things on the board level, they can do that. Every member will always have that right. But I think we're all sensitive to each other's time as well. And if we've had a committee that has met, has discussed, has deliberated, and has reached a consensus or at least 6 votes, I think we're all probably going to be sensitive to whether it's necessary to rehash something at the board. And so we can focus our time and our attention on other matters. So that's, one of the goals too. And yes, Mr. Pennings, it is a problem, and that's something that none of us as board members should ever have to do, is come to a committee meeting and we don't have enough for a quorum. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think the way that we fix that is let's all, let's make an effort to be there. You now have an opportunity to have a seat at the table at every committee and to participate in every committee, so let's participate. And I don't think and again, we may circle back around and we may, it's a learning process and we may go back to a smaller committee structure, but in some ways I don't think that that's a good product. And I say that because if you just have, when you think about it, if you just have 5 members on a committee, all you need is 3 people for a quorum, and all you need is 2 people for a majority. Now, if you're meeting, it's efficient, you can move things through committee, but is that a good product? And is that something that's really, from a time-wise standpoint, it's probably going to get rehashed again at the board level anyway because you only had 2 members that voted it out. And it's going to require some additional discussion. So, again, I think what I'm hoping is from a board standpoint, a committee standpoint, I'm focused on the product, and I'm hoping that we have a good product. And I think the way we have a good product is having everybody a seat at the table and to be involved and be able to have their voice heard.
Mr. Pennings.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Bates. The problem was at that meeting that we were being told by the school board attorney that we could discuss anything, but we couldn't even take a vote to move it to the full school board because we didn't have enough people here. So we weren't sure, and we were taking the advice of the school board attorney, so we're kind of sitting there in limbo. But I agree with everything you're saying, and a night like tonight, great.
Mr. Lester.
And just real quick, I'd like to thank Mr. Bates, because I did make the comment recently that by having the structure we have, that, it is inclusive. And, it was right along the lines of what you said, that, there should not be any animosity about, well, did this person make it? Why are they there? Why am I not there? So that, I enjoy that part, and I think that's a good idea. Like you said, it's not always easy if all of us show up to go through and come up with an agreement. But eventually, hopefully, you're still going to have 11 people here when that decision is made. So either way, you can make it, you can make it 11 one way or you can do it the other. But I appreciate the fact that, we have been much more inclusive.
I do want to say one other thing, because I don't want to belabor this, but I think Mr. Bates has indicated he is an open door policy about discussing some of these things. So, we can bring it before the, various committees as needed, but I think also he's certainly open to talking to people if they have some concerns about the way things are proceeding or votes or any of those type of questions based on the structure that he has envisioned as the chairman. So with that open door policy, I hope people will take him up on that. Do we have a motion to adjourn in the interest? All right, first from Mr. Penning.
Just real quick, I said the SHAC meeting was Wednesday. It's Wednesday the 10th, because today is Monday, it's not Thursday. And anyway, it's the 10th.
Thank you.
Same time.
Thank you. So we have a first from Mr. Pennings, a second from Mr. Moore. All in favor say aye. All right. Any opposed? We're adjourned.
started on this. So thank you for answering my question on that. All right, everybody, y'all ready to get started? That's right. Okay, thank you all for staying for this meeting. Mr. Lester, would you like for me to call roll? Because otherwise I have a sign-in sheet. That's up to you. Okay. Well, if you want to swing that camera around and get all of us, I do have documented who all is here. I'll make a motion that we adopt the agenda. Do I have a second? All right. All those in favor say yay. Yay. Any nays? Okay. For the approval of the minutes, I have a typo. It's supposed to be January minutes, so I apologize for that. But if I can just verbally correct that, can I have a motion to approve the January minutes?
So made.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. And a second, please. Second. Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Okay, all those in favor of approving the January minutes, say yay. Yay. Any opposed? Excellent. Okay. First topic, I want to thank Kim Doddridge real quick for coming. I asked her to come just to kind of be a central office liaison for us, and she happily came. And also, she has the binders if anyone's interested to see our newspaper articles. Our new logo, for those who were interested in community input, Dr. Marzak put it out on the website and gave an opportunity for everyone to vote, and most of you have probably seen it. This is our new logo, and there is a press conference to unveil it here at Horace Porter, 4 o'clock this Thursday. I hope anyone who's available will attend. But that goal has been, we've done it. We have made our new logo. Hope everyone likes it. Several emails have gone out about Day on the Hill. I have not received any feedback, and my email was last call. Dr. Marzak, that's where he is tonight. He's at a Legislators' Day. There is the topic of vouchers, which I'm under the impression is kind of becoming critical. There are a lot of benefits to us going. I think it's just, my understanding is maybe the time is a challenge when people have jobs and things. I'd love for discussion to know anyone's feelings. Do we want to try to meet with a legislator on a different day? Do we want to just say, sorry, it's not in the cards for us? Or I'd just love to know what y'all are saying, because Dr. Marzak seems to feel quite strongly. Mr. Bates?
Just to update everyone, I did ask Dr. Marzak to reach out to Representative Butts to see if she would have an opportunity to maybe come and talk to our board or one of the committees about the voucher bill and what exactly it does, and so that she can give us some input on that, and we could possibly give her some input. Of course, this is a busy part of the year, so I don't know whether her schedule would allow her to do that, but I haven't been able to touch base with the director yet again to see if he's been successful, but maybe he's had an opportunity to talk to her today, possibly.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he will report. Oh, sorry, Mr. Dudley.
Well, my position, does anybody know the position Ms. Butts has on the bill? From what I gather, she's sort of the one supporting it, so I don't know our chances of swaying her to do any different. And, I mean, I can't attend on that specific day down the hill, but, I would. I do appreciate the invite for her to come talk to us about it and then find our position. So that's my thought there.
Okay. Mr. Pennings?
I don't know what Ms. Butt's position is, but I do know when you go up to the Hill, she's one of very few that will pull up a chair and get you all chairs and sit down and talk to you and ask questions and answer questions. Very few of them will do that. In fact, she's the only one when I've been up there that would ever do that. I mean, some of them you still stand in the office door and talk to you for a minute or so, but Ms. Butt will sit down and listen to you.
Okay. Well, that is good to know, and we will listen to hopefully hear back from the director about whether that will be possible. Mr. Morrison?
You know, we have more legislators than just Ms. Butt. David Shepard is one of our representatives, and Joey Hensley is our state senator. And I would sincerely encourage everyone that can to go today on the Hill. It's early, you get to have breakfast, and you get to, kind of see your other board members from other districts. You get to talk with legislators. They'll have a program that morning. And if we do it correctly and call ahead and get appointments with these folks, they will see you. Joey Hensley doesn't like to see us come, but he will talk with us. And David Shepard will give us time, and Sheila Butt will sit down with us. But that is one time that we get to see all three of them at once, and we can take a real, I think, a large delegation. We've had as many as 6 or so in the room at one time with them, and that's pretty impressive. So I would encourage everyone to go that can.
I have it. I'll let you know. Okay. I have an email from Kim with a website update, but would you just like to tell them?
Am I on? It feels so formal up here. Yes, I have an implementation manager with Sharp School, and he and I are in contact. Not too much of an update. This afternoon, there was a little bit of a snag. We have 3 school websites that were designed by a local designer, Pam Foster, who is a pleasure to work with. I don't know if you all know her or not, but she's terrific, great coder, great designer. And she has done 3 of our school websites and maintains those very, very well. I did learn from Sharp School just late this afternoon that they cannot migrate the content from these particular sites at Central High School, Mount Pleasant High School, and Hampshire Unit School. So I've emailed Pam Foster to let her know, just to give her a heads up through the evening in case she checks her email, that I'll want to talk to her tomorrow. This is going to be a coding issue, and so something that I won't be able to speak to, and I'll have to wrap in our tech folks at some point, but want to talk to Pam first. So those are 3 little snags that we hit late this afternoon that we'll have to address. As far as the district website, now that we have our logo, I have requested those files from the designer that you all contracted with, Robin, who is terrific, and she provides me files, hexadecimal colors, those things that are, digital language and those sorts of things. So that's coming along, and I'll be able to deliver that. My implementation manager does know that those are coming, and that the old logo was just a placeholder for us, and the colors were just placeholders. So everything's running pretty smoothly. With 23 sites, it does take a bit of time, certainly. And there will be a time at which I feel like the schools are in a place that I actually will turn those over to the schools themselves and say, it's time for you to do your proofreading. It's time for you to look at your buttons. Are they named properly, and that sort of thing. But it's still kind of in my house right now, except for the 3 tech issues that we'll hope to wrap up this week. Any questions while I'm here, maybe? Yes, sir.
Do we have a basic timeline of when we'll have those out?
We don't really. Whenever we contracted with Sharp School, they were sort of asking the question of, do you have a go-live date? And we even knew at that time that the school board was very much interested in, and you hadn't contracted with Robin at that time, to redo the logo. And really, for these to align, is really great timing for us to have our logo now. I would sort of hated to have seen it gone live with the old look and then us have to redo that. That's just a personal preference. There's no really right or wrong to anything having to do with art. So we don't really, it could be March, it could be May, you know.
Would it be too much for us to get a kind of a date from them? Now that we do have a logo?
We've got some tech issues that we will have to hammer out. They're really, I wouldn't be able to speak comfortably with, they're working with authentication right now. Again, not a language that I speak, that Tommy's involved with. I can pose the question, I guess, is what I should say.
I guess, let me back up then. Personally,
yes,
I would like to see us get some kind of date.
Yeah.
Because it's, these kind of things can drag out forever if nobody's really pushing a date. And on top of that, I don't see any reason why we need to, we're not a dinner party. We don't have to wait for every school website to come out at the same time, I don't think. I think once they get some of the back-end engine work done, they can roll out some of the smaller schools and some of the other schools that don't have coding issues. They should be able to. But regardless, I think it would be, I would personally like to see them, now that they have the new logo, or will have it shortly.
Yes.
Give us a date and let us know when they can have either the whole thing done or maybe start rolling out some of the school sites. Either or I would be happy with. But I think we need to go ahead and get some kind of target in place. If they miss the target, we can talk about that when we get there, but I'd kind of like to see a date.
Yeah, I'll ask for one.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
thank you. The next item is discussion about the Mule Day Parade. At the last meeting, Mr. Lassiter showed a graphic of some ideas about a Mule Day Parade. However, given that we rushed the Christmas parade and we did a great job and it was a lot of fun, we need to plan appropriately and do it differently this time. So we have tossed out the idea of recruiting community and school help. So, Kim, this is where we will need you if we decide to do it. But can we get an informal show of hands? Who is in? This is a time commitment. Also, one thing I think for us to consider is Mule Day is at the end of spring break, so there could be travel plans. I would love if we could just get kind of an informal show of hands of who is interested in participating, and if you're not going to be able to work on it, you can help. It is, Mule Day is what, the 6th or so? It's first weekend in April.
Yeah, unless it's Easter.
That's a great question. I should have that information, but I don't. Mr. Penny?
I will be willing to help if Mr. Moore gets the wheel bearings fixed on his trailer.
Mr. Moore, is that doable? Okay. And Mr. Laster, I know you've already put some brain power towards it, and I really do appreciate it. So I've heard from these three.
Mr. Lassiter, Mr. Moore's handyman again.
Okay. Excellent. Mr. Morrison?
I just can't commit. I'll help if I can, but I can't commit to it.
Okay, and I will hold that grandbaby. If you are babysitting that day, I will hold the grandbaby while you come.
If I have the opportunity to babysit, I promise you I won't be there. But
Okay, well, he doesn't want to share. That's fine. Mr. Beaver? Okay. Mr. Dudley?
Depends on any given day. Feeling like I was trying.
Okay. Mr. Laster?
And again, I guess we need to decide this as a group, but along the lines of what we did last time versus this time, personally, when we were talking about the community involvement, I guess one of the problems that we were going to have is, what do we want to do? How are we going to decide what we want to do? Fairly quickly. And my thought was, if we do something that's 8 to 10 different, for lack of a better word, units of work, I mean, I'd love to see us let the schools go through and say, all right, who would like to either work or provide a place to do this? And I'd love to see this stuff get picked up by, help with local businesses help and say, again, I'm not going to do a whole float, but I'll do this section of it. And us give them the guideline and just let them run with it. If it looks good, hopefully it will, but if not, then, that's.
I love that idea. How do you propose we let businesses know that they have this opportunity?
I think some of it, if I were going to do this, I think one of the things I would do is, obviously, we have a local communication device very handy. We have social media very handy. And as far as that goes, if the schools said, if we were to choose to do the carousel type thing, you've got 8 different carousel panels. And I think if the schools were to say, School X says, yes, I want to do this, then I think they can also help find partners that they know. And, like one person that works for a business that I'd talked to said, man, that's a pretty good idea. And I said, if we did this is what I would picture in my mind. Getting your company, let's say, to either help buy materials, help with the work, whatever, but this section would belong to this group, and you guys are responsible to have it done on this time with these guidelines. So, I mean, we've got social media, we've got the schools, we've got the Daily Herald. I'm sure we can get it out on the radio, maybe even in Tennessee, and if we wanted to go that far. But, you know, I think with word of mouth, that I think we could set a deadline and say, in this amount of time, if we get response that we want to help, we'll do it. If we don't, then thank you, but we'll try again next year.
Okay. Mike or Michael, would you be interested in seeing his graphic? Have you seen it? At the last community relations? Well, I just thought if you wanted a picture of it, so you could see if anybody wanted to participate, we can make that happen. Just let us know, okay? But anyways, Kim, can we send something out to the schools and just say, you know, we're thinking about doing another float. We would love participation to range from a site to build again. Central was very generous last time, and we could probably talk them into it, but if somebody else wants that, we need materials and we need manpower. And, you know, I would even be willing to sign off on service hours if any, you know, school, you know, students in the art department or anything like that would like to participate. Or I think there's even like a small engine. So, you know, if some kind of mechanics class wants to participate, you know, service hours are available. And just the warm and fuzzies from helping the school board. What? Is that, we can talk, call me tomorrow, Will. But thank you for being willing to circulate, because that's where I just feel like I really need you. Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion?
The only thing on that is we may need to nail down some more specifics on the actual float before we get too much further into what we're asking for. And we probably need to do that pretty quickly.
I would agree.
Well, last time it came from a select few, and I am all about inclusiveness. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to participate. You know, please throw out your ideas, but otherwise, let's just get together, nail it down, and make it happen. I mean, I don't think this requires
Well, I think
everyone.
unofficially, Mr. Lassiter may be our float, unofficial float czar. Yeah, that the government
I
likes
think
that
he
one.
is our design expert.
So I would be more than happy to get with him at some point, or anybody else that would be involved in nailing down the specifics of the float quickly. Maybe we can set up some kind of time when we can talk about that and get something specific to get out to the schools and to the community on what we're looking to do. If he would be okay with heading that up.
Once y'all get that, why don't we get that to you, and then we'll send the circulate through
You like how I just
whatever
volunteered him for that?
means.
Is that
Willing.
nice?
But it sounds like we got like a little Mule Day committee, Ms. Powers, Mr. Lesser, Mr. Moore, maybe.
Yay.
And the Daily
More
Herald will be
committees.
involved too.
Okay. Well, good deal. But it sounds like there's general willingness and enthusiasm. Great. Okay. Our last item moving through, I have, it's come up a couple times about relationship building with the county commission. I think the 2x2 program went great for those who attended. Thought it was a really nice time and great rapport. I have a suggestion. So, one, brace yourself, and two, I might need a drum roll. But I've talked with a couple of people and kind of brainstormed this, that maybe the school board challenge the county commission in a basketball game. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's their star player.
A what? Oh, so they are challenging back, they are reciprocating our challenge. Well, a counter challenge, yes. So anyways, maybe we just need to make it part of Mule Day and have like a big old event. But anyways, well, I did.
You're back with your basketball skills, though, Mr. Burdett. Is that what it
Well, that was similar to Sonny Shackelford's response to me. but then we discussed, given that they have 22 to choose from and we have 11.
That's a deeper bench.
Yeah. So anyways,
We've got several high schools we can recruit from.
well, Wayne Lindsay, I think
There you go.
the facility, I think we can definitely come up with a gym, and Wayne discussed that several of our principals and they do officiate.
Well, we could have maybe the city and county mayors being the officials, maybe.
Oh, now that would be good. But,
Dangerous.
well, I will say this is one thing in kind of some of the brainstorming, is that given that the sheriff's department is funded by the county commission, and yet their SROs serve our schools, it would be a common benefit if we turned it into a benefit that we could fund either their shop for a cop, or there could be a need of the SROs in our county that are not being tended to, so it could be a shared act of goodwill for our community. So, do y'all want to think about this, or would y'all like to talk about it?
Think about it.
We can think about it, but I haven't played basketball in a really long time.
And that's what will make it fun and funny. And, I mean, have you not been to, like, the fire department plays the police department? And
Well, they have blood drives. It's a good thing, because we might need it if we play basketball.
I was going to say,
I think maybe what you're saying is that the county commission is scared of us. I don't know. I mean, do we look this capable?
I'll wait 3 hours for this.
Mr. Pennings?
Can we substitute for age? Because at my age, I shouldn't be playing basketball, but I have Magic on Facebook. So.
Mr. Moore?
I guess to get a little more serious, because we could go laughing all night. I really appreciate this being brought up of some kind of relationship building with county commission. I think it's a good idea. Not quite sure basketball maybe is the right thing, but I've definitely something I'd like to explore. Bowling. I could probably do one of those. But I think this is a great idea. It's something that I would definitely think we ought to explore further and find out something that maybe hits a wider range of people, so that it's not as limiting as basketball might be. But I think this is a good thing. I think it continue the spirit we've already started building with the other group of elected officials, and I definitely would like to explore this further.
Okay, and those are good suggestions, I will say.
Well, and seeing they have 22, if we're only 11, we could supplement the other 11 with school children. Yeah.
You can get central office staff. Put Scott out there and
Okay, well, the ice has been broken on this topic, and next month, please think of what your skills are that you would like to. What'd you say? Okay, fair enough. Well, next month we will bring back other options for a competition.
I've got one other thing
Mr.
along
Dudley?
those lines. Last year, the county had a hamburger thing at the park. Well, it happened that it was scheduled on the evening that we had a meeting. So if they're gonna have that, I mean, that's a good opportunity for the school board and the commissioners to meet together. And so if we're gonna have it, can we try and fix the schedules where we're not in competition with each other?
Okay, that's a good point. Excellent. Okay, does anyone have anything else? Mr. Morrison makes a motion to adjourn. Mr. Pennings, thank you. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Ha ha.